It's Friday morning. Good morning, and welcome to the XFL. I keep saying the XFL Markcast.
We are
old habits die hard.
Yes, old habits die hard, and you are an old dog, and we are teaching you new tricks.
Wow.
Welcome
back.
back.
The way you welcome me back to the podcast. This is the way you do it.
I was going to say, welcome back to the show, Paul. Remember that one time you went out of town and our good friend Brian Woods decided to relaunch a football league? Remember that time?
I remember that time. That was really perfect timing for me, I guess, to leave you hanging there. I'm sorry about that.
We got it. Yeah, Matt Lyons came on, but it was like 6 a.m. and I got up. I was like, oh, this is fun. this is going to be a fun wrinkle in our day.
This is fine. Yeah,
this is fine. I will tell you right now, when we get to XFL stuff later, I got a rant in me. I don't want this to be an explicit episode with our big 3-hour crazy double stuffed episode today. I'm making up for lost time because Paul was out of town last week, but I have a rant brewing in my heart when we get to XFL stuff later.
All right. It sounds like a blast. So with that being said, do you have anything else you want to plug before we get into this thing?
Yeah. So we have, first off, I just have to shout it from the rooftops. Friend of the show, Cole Boozer.
Yep.
So just from the bottom of my heart, congratulations. They announced yesterday the Alouettes that Cole got signed to the Alouettes alongside friend of the show, Matt Mengel. Cole was on a couple weeks ago from the Spring League. They're still working through things down there. Also, David Brown of the Alphas got signed as well, but I don't care about David because he wasn't on our show. But Cole, just from the bottom of my heart, I couldn't be more thrilled for Cole, and congratulations all around. Also, it's off camera right now, but I'll grab it in the break. Matt Mengel, I have Matt Mengel's Team Nuklear gamer jersey. It's a custom Markcast one, so we're going to open it when we get to the Spring League stuff later. So I'm going to tag Matt. Matt's going to share the show. We got all the crazy stuff, but I'll go grab it. But I got my Team Nuklear. Imagine me holding the jersey right now, and we're going to unbox it. Did you know we had an unboxing with all this other craziness going on?
Oh, I did not know that. You dropped that on me.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
This is what are your words to describe the show we have today?
Oh my gosh. It's not even jam-packed anymore. This is like a regular, like ESPN length, like podcast. It's going to be over 2 hours. Oh, maybe 2.5.
It's
maybe 3.
It's at least we have 2 hours and 7 minutes recorded right now before we even start today.
Are you serious?
Yeah, Pat and I did 45 minutes last night. We'll drop that in the show. Yeah, but see, you don't have to be involved in any of that. Yeah, so it's we are. If you have any grace in your heart, please subscribe. I'm going to put the bug up, but by God, if there was ever a time for you to really subscribe and support the show, I'm looking at about it. And then we have Michael Cohen, right, coming on, lawyer. I'm looking. It's going to be a good pack a lunch, bring a sandwich, just like hunker down, and you got some good stuff coming.
I have to tell you something. Will used to listen to our show, and he doesn't anymore.
Yeah,
because they're getting too long for him to listen to. But just letting you know.
But many other people are listening a lot more.
I know.
So that's, yes. Huge show today. So, because again, we kind of had stuff scheduled and all the USFL stuff came on. So Pat Steinberg, he is a Flames radio host. He writes for the CFL League. So I thought that was, the CFL definitely knows what a Markcast is because he had to get signed off to do our show. So I thought that was very good. Pat's on, he hosts the big show on Sportsnet 960. Pat and I talk about the vote on Monday, the C-218 bill. We talk about we didn't do too much Bachelor. We could have done Bachelor, but Pat's a great guy. And then Paul McCallum was supposed to be on last week. Paul had a work emergency. This was our big, Tom Mayenknecht was great as well last week, is a phenomenal guest. But Paul, he was kind of my ace in the hole. Paul played in the first ever XFL league ever back in 2001. Played for the Las Vegas Outlaws, kicked the first points ever, had the ball from the first ever field goal points kicked, did the whole XFL 1.0, was going to come back. And then obviously, everything canceled. And he went back, played 23 years in the CFL. So Paul's got like XFL 1.0 stories, Dick Ebersol, Vince McMahon stories, we talked off camera, like riding motorcycles. It sounded like a big party in Vegas in XFL 1.0. But he's a CFL legend. So what do you think about our two big CFL guests?
That's great. That's great, and then on top of that, we have Steve Ehrhart, who was the former executive director of the USFL. You spelled it
Yeah, I
wrong.
saw that right. I just saw that. Yeah.
And he's a current executive director of the Liberty Bowl. A lot of insight from Steve Ehrhart. We have Kyle Smith of the USFL Project coming on, talking about why people are passionate about the USFL. And then I did some work, actually. I actually booked my own guest this week.
Good.
I can't believe that I'm doing that. That's cool. Michael Cohen, intellectual property and copyright lawyer, is going to come on to discuss the ins and the outs and the what have yous with what's going on with this copyright situation. There's a lot of questions that people like myself, people, like Braden over at CFL Reddit have. And, we'll see where that goes. This is like, we felt like we needed all of these people to kind of not only, get that, talk to people about the history of the CFL and the XFL, but also get into, I guess, the legalese or the more in depth with what's going on with this copyright thing, because a lot of people have a lot of questions.
Yeah, no, and that was great. I mean, thank goodness, Steve Ehrhart, he's executive director of the Liberty Bowl right now, taking the time, coming on. And then don't worry, we're going to get into all the XFL, the Kevin LaForce hire, what is months, what is years. We were going to do that whole thing. Dany dropped another post last night, and Mike Mitchell did a write-up on it just in time for our show. So I really appreciate that. So we're all that stuff. So we're going to do CFL stuff. We're going to do those interviews, all the XFL stuff, and then all the USFL, because I know that there's a tremendous interest in all that stuff. So there'll be time codes for everything in the show. We'll have it all, but please enjoy, like, and subscribe.
That makes me wonder, like, should I put time codes in the audio version from here on out too?
I can send them over to you.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
Well, they might be different with the Spreaker ads, so maybe you might have to do that.
Well, then I could just do is just add the time on. I can do basic math. I'm a journalist, but I can do some math.
All right, well, I'll send you.
I didn't go to Arizona State, so I can do some math.
Okay, I'll send that over. I just wanted to make sure we talked about this at the top of the show. There's all this stuff going on with the Red Blacks, suspending Chris Larson, some alleged kind of hate crimes things going on against David Gomez. I know that Braden is really passionate about that. There's a GoFundMe set up for David Gomez, in his recovery. I just wanted to make sure the Red Blacks have suspended him. He was, over the weekend, there was a bunch of stuff going on. And so we don't live in a vacuum. We try not to focus on, all the kind of not pleasanty stuff, but I did want to make sure that we talked about that. Did you follow any of that? Anything to add on that? I
saw the social media post from the Red Blacks that said they were looking into it and investigating it. I didn't know what it was about until, this morning when I woke up and read this article, and it's, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. I mean, it's 2021. What are we doing with the hate crimes, guys? Why?
Well, yeah. And there's been a lot of brands putting pride flags and things on their logos and everything. And, we try to be this all inclusive.
That happens every June.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But then it's like, you gotta, people are glad that the CFL are investigating this, cause it's like, you really got to practice what you preach here. And if you're going to, that is the sentiment, is if we're going to do all this, like, hey, look how good we are, that we're promoting all this, then you also have to live that walk. So
definitely. Cool. With that being said, let's move into the regular news. Of course, the big thing happening next week, next Monday, I believe it is, right?
Yep. June 14th.
Monday, June 14th. The CFL has scheduled its board of governors to call on a vote for a proposed August 5th season start date. Interesting.
Yeah. So we got some quotes from Naylor here. We have Pat and I obviously talk about this as well. Pat he says stunned if they don't go forward with it. To me, it just feels weird. Like, we announced this back, we did the delay. Now we're doing the vote. I don't know. I'm ready for a bombshell Monday. I don't know about you. I want a CFL season, but I don't know. Naylor says, there's only so many teams, so it'd be pretty easy to do a straw poll. But it feels like I don't know why we're doing this, if that makes sense. I get that you have to, but
you have to. But at the same time, if they're doing a board of governors meeting, vote, are there going to be any health officials in not considered a vote or something like that, but any health officials are going to come and maybe provide some testify, basically? Is that going to happen at all?
Yeah, to me, I just don't know. I feel like this was the same thing that happened last year. We did the vote, the teams didn't want to play, we did all this, and I'm just wondering. Obviously, we want to move forward with everything, but I'm just curious, like, is all this for naught? Have we worked all this? Have we recorded all these hours of podcasting? But, Naylor thinks it's going to be a go-ahead. I know Farhan's bullish on it, and like I said, Pat, but, we're still, like, Pat and I talking in our interview, and he's like, well, we need to get significant numbers of fans in stands, anywhere, 10, 15, 20%. I'm like, yeah, but the fact that we're voting on Monday and we don't have those numbers, that scares me. And I get that you don't want to put that stuff in concrete and say, like, well, we got to have 20% of fans, but, like, do they know those metrics behind the scenes? I mean, I hope so, but that's the kind of stuff that I would just, as someone that covers this stuff, would like to know a little bit more.
I mean, if it's any indication, we've covered this, the, I guess, debate between both the health officials who are saying, wait a second, what are we doing? What are we doing? And then also the football people that are saying, oh, our protocols are approved. Like there's been this debate between the two sides. So it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out, because I mean, I think some of the CFL teams are just assuming that, by the time the season starts, everything will be under control. But like we pointed out numerous times, only 6% of the people in Canada have their second dose of the whatever vaccine. So
I think it's crazy time to think we're starting August 5th. I think it's going to be Labor Day at best. I think they're going to announce and say, August 5th, we're going to figure out. I just think it's crazy time. I don't think you can do it, but that's just me. I mean, we talk with people smarter than us that say it's a go ahead. Obviously, if you trust Naylor and Pat and Farhan, I have this tentative timeline here. This was sent out from Salman Eli. I can never say his name.
Yeah.
Eli Mimian, the CFL PA president. This is we've talked with Mengel about this. They're getting ready for the vote. They're going to do a 7-day quarantine on June 25th, arrive on July 2nd. They're going to quarantine from the 2nd to the 9th, and then training camp starts on the 10th. That's kind of like the plan if all goes ahead. So, I mean, at least that's good to know. But I guess knowing here we're, June 10th, and then knowing that we got to hit the road here on, be there July 2nd, that's a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, this is all assuming that everything goes as planned on the 14th. I mean, it just seems rather careless that they're doing this, the 14th, and then they expect everyone to like quit, because some of these players got jobs.
Yeah.
Some of these players got day jobs, to make ends meet. So they're not going to be able to even give 2 weeks to his day jobs, because if they need to be, let's see. Oh no, they arrive on July 2nd.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like,
but you got to self-isolate, 7-day isolation, June 25th. So you're talking in 2 weeks now. Like they would have to tell them. So that's the thing. So if you were working and you found out, let's say you found out the 14th, so you have to start self-quarantining on June 25th. So that's, that's literally 2 weeks.
Well, it's 11 days, not really 2 weeks. It's only 11 days. And that's not even counting like weekends that don't really count against, a business in a business week timeline.
Yeah. The other thing I had here, and they're talking, I had a clip here. I don't think we're going to play it because I think we can talk through it, but they're talking about this, their return to play protocol, how the players are basically going to be housebound, right? That they're going to go to practice, go back home, go to the games, go back home. And the idea is, and we had a quote from Farhan on the show with Naylor. You have a lot of the U.S. players that maybe have been living down in the States, free and clear, right? I'm vaccinated. I can go out to dinner. I can go do whatever. And then like, am I going to go up and live in Alberta and sit at home for 4 months?
Good question. But I mean, to that point, it's like there's a certain percentage, like, okay, so you can still catch and carry. You could be a carrier for COVID even though you're vaccinated. That's that I'm assuming. I'm not a flipping scientist. But I think that's probably the argument that'll be made, is that like, well, only 6% of our population is double vaccinated. So until we reach herd immunity or our vaccine numbers turn, at least 50%, you're going to have to quarantine at home. and you won't be able to go out and do the things you want to do, even though you're double vaccinated. That's a lot of hope, prayers that someone's just going to give up their social life and going out and about for 4 months because, I mean, they came here, they're American citizens and they got double vaccinated, or they were here anyway and they got double vaccinated. So now you're, asking them to kind of go against the protocols that we've widely accepted here in the US, that if you're double vaccinated, you're kind of good to go. That's a tough order. That's a tall order, I should say.
Yeah, it's good. We had a wedding on Saturday at one of the night. I mean, I would consider it probably one of the most prestigious hotels in downtown Seattle. I mean, like really nice. And yeah, like it was no mask, like whatever you want, because it's like everyone, you had to self-attest that you were vaccinated, but like, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, to like have lived in this bubble for whatever, and then like, okay, like it doesn't matter, go for it. But I mean, obviously, like players like Matt Mengel and Cole Boozer. I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody that like they want to play. They're going to go stay in quarantine and do what they need to do. But I'm just saying, like that is a tough sell if you're someone that was like maybe on the fence and you're like, well, I don't want to. Who cares? I don't want to go do that. So
right, very good, very good. A lot of questions. A lot of wondering.
Yeah, this just was an interesting quote because we talked with Jason Greger about this a while ago about the vaccines, and Naylor was on TS 1200. He doesn't think you're going to need proof of vaccination to attend sporting events up there. That they're just trying to get fans back in the stands.
Reckless, but okay. Anyway,
I just thought I thought that was interesting because obviously we had that debate. I remember that went kind of crazy. Like his Jason Greger was like, just make people show vaccine cards and stuff, and people, the whole. I get it, the whole, my choice and all that. But if you're going to go attend a sporting event at somewhere that,
Isn't it interesting that like the people that are saying my body, my choice about vaccines, I'm not going to get political. Never mind.
Yeah, we're not going to go political. That's going.
I'll just drop it.
Yeah. And then this was just interesting. We're talking a lot about like CFL and the Players Association, everything. The vice president of the association, Ryan King, thinks that they're like as close and talking and everything as they've ever been. He says a lot of people are paying really close attention to every little thing. It's very much getting the process of getting the CFL back to play. I can say this is the closest that we felt to the CFL in many, many years. He said that on TSN 1260 in Edmonton.
Awesome to hear.
So, I mean, at least they're apprised. You don't need to keep like me, the podcaster, apprised, but at least keep the players apprised of what's going on and how close we are and everything. Because that's my fear. It's like if we're not hearing it, they're not hearing it.
Correct. So, and then they said that a lot of their concerns are out the window at this point. So I mean, even the protocols to get fans in the stands, that's not a real concern. I don't know.
That's the thing. When they talk about the return to play protocol, those are approved now, from what I am understanding. But the fans in the stands are not approved. There's the two things. It is the physical playing in the field, and then it is the the fans in the stands. So it is an A and a B, and the A is done and the B is not. This is interesting. The Riders, just that they have their $7.6 million contingency plan. I reached out to Murray McCormick to talk about this. Regina Leader Post. He's, I'm assuming, friends with Rob Vanstone. He's on vacation this week, but I'd like to have him come on to talk about the Rough Riders, but just that they would most likely have to use that money to get back on the field because they're. I see like Naylor and them predicting like tremendous loss across the board for all these teams, even if they play this year. I mean, it's just insane.
I mean, yeah, I was talking to someone on Clubhouse, Ainsley. I can't remember. I don't want to butcher her last name. But she was like, I don't see how this profit sharing thing works either. Like if they were to do all the games on, the West Coast of Canada for the first half of the season, then come back over to, Ontario and stuff. She's like, I don't see how the profit sharing figures out either. So there's a lot of valid questions here in terms of how much money these teams are going to lose, because they are going to lose money. Let's be honest. They're going to lose money again. And part of the problem that we've been stressing is that there's no, fail-safe option, no way to keep these teams afloat, because the CFL hasn't really done a great job at putting a business model forth that would, withstand this kind of thing.
Did you low-key just drop that you were in the CFL Clubhouse chat?
I did low key drop that.
Wow, that's good. That's good.
The Clubhouse does have its purposes, Reed. It does.
I don't understand Clubhouse. There is a wedding photographer I love, and she clubhouses all the time. And I go, Jen, if you just did a podcast and record these, you would make so much money on them and not have it be this Clubhouse thing.
Well, I think what they're doing now is they're using Clubhouse to kind of do their podcasts.
Yeah, but you can't. Are you recording on there?
I mean, I've recorded Clubhouse.
Yeah, well, we can, but that's not.
Yeah, I know we can't. We have the equipment to do that, but I don't know.
Anyway, so this is happening today as we record. So we won't have I have to go. We both have to work today, but the single game sports betting is having their third reading today at 2 p.m. Eastern. And then it's going to go back to kind of like the final vote. Like I said, we talked in the interview. Pat's like, I would be floored if this doesn't pass. There's way too much money behind it. And the momentum right now to get this passed before they go to recess on June. I think it's like June 24th, 25th, they break for the summer. So anyway, I want to touch on that. Pat and I talk about it, but like, we're not going to have if the guy walks in and tears it up on the Senate floor, we're not going to have that on the show today. So
we're not. Bo Levi Mitchell doesn't want the CFL to just survive anymore, instead thrive in a partnership with the XFL. He keeps talking the XFL, making a lot of people mad up there north of the border. He says a lot of the longtime fans are resistant to change when it comes to our league, and I absolutely understand that. It's been around for a very long time, and it has stood the test of time. I understand their thought process that even though things are tough right now, that we will stand the test of time again, and I agree with that. I mean, I think Bo Levi Mitchell sees the writing on the wall that something needs to happen in terms of expansion by way of partnership with the XFL or whatever the case may be. It's just unfortunate that a lot of people don't share that sentiment.
Yeah, he keeps talking this because I was like, wait, because we talked about the Bo Levi thing like 2 weeks ago. I'm like, wait, is this? No, he did like another podcast. The CFL has the Waggle podcast. And so he did like an official CFL one on this. I'm like, this guy, because I'm like, these are some, like, I didn't even copy over some of the quotes because I'm like, these are like literally the same things he said, but it was very odd that Bo wants to see XFL franchise in BC or wherever. I mean, he's big on that. So
very cool stuff. And I just, I talked about that in the Clubhouse chat too. And also congratulations to, I guess your team, the Edmonton Elks. They're selling merch like Austin 316 shirts back during the Attitude Era.
Did you like that? You missed the whole Elks thing. Do you like the Elks logo?
I love it. I think it's great. It's sharp. It encompasses the colors. I mean, you can still use that EE thing that you have behind there on your wall. I think it's great. I think it's a great name. I think it's a great look. I think it's going to be awesome. I'm not switching teams though, but I think it's still going to be awesome.
Yeah, here's my little Reed Debbie Downer. So Dave Campbell, love Dave. Dave was on the show last week. He says that the Elks executive director of marketing, Alan Watt, so the amount of merch they've sold in the last 7 days is equal to 3 straight home games in terms of merch, right? And so and I was going with, but here's what I go, and because I was talking with Braden about this today, got lost on him. I go, how often can you rebrand a franchise? Once every 40, 50 years? I mean, like really, like new logo, new name, new everything.
I mean, new logo. No, I mean, new logos happen all the time. Like there was a time where the Toronto Blue Jays would change logos every 3 years. It's true. That used to happen all the time. In terms of new name, though, you don't see it that often.
But I'm saying like this is like the pin and the grenade through the grenade, and like, yeah, I mean, they sold 3 games worth of merch in a week. Like that's phenomenal. I bought a shirt and a hat. I mean, I'm part of that, but like, I don't know. Is that, you know what I mean? Like that's a big, it's like Vince McMahon. Like that's a big card to play in the WWE. Like that's a big ratings pop to get. Like you're not going to do that ever again. Like they're never going to have another Elks rebrand to get. That was just my Debbie Downer. Do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. You're not being Debbie Downer. You're just being realistic. And how long did it take you to buy the hat and shirt, by the way?
Immediately.
How many minutes?
Immediately. 10:01.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Yeah, I paused the press conference and went to the website. I literally did. I paused,
hi, Mark.
Paused the YouTube video. Anyway, so they're coming. We'll do an unboxing on the show. But anyway, so that is the CFL stuff. Do you want to toss to the break? And then we got all XFL rant, man.
All right. Coming up after the break, we're going to Reed's going to talk to Pat Steinberg and Paul McCallum. And then we got the XFL stuff. Stay tuned for that.
Well, I don't know if we should start with Bachelor talk or with CFL talk. What do you think?
You choose. I'm ready to rock on either side.
So there's a lot going on right now. I mean, obviously we have the vote on Monday, right, between the team governors. We've been talking a lot here about the C-218 bill. Obviously, the USFL stuff has come up. What is most of interest to you of everything kind of going on right now in the news?
Oh, well, I mean, the gambling bill up here is fascinating because I think it's going to be massive for the CFL. I think it's going to be massive for sports period in this country to be able to single game bet and all that type of stuff. So I think that is probably of most interest to me. Just because I think it's going to be so big and so cool, and for a bit of a degenerate gambler myself to be able to roll into an actual physical sports book in this country, in my city, will be pretty cool. But this vote on Monday is huge, and you know I read all the same things you do. I read all the different things about how there might be some teams that are into it, some teams that are not into it, and I just hope that everything's on track so that we're playing football in early August. I'm pretty confident, like I'm very confident we will, but until everything's good to go, until you get the thumbs up, you never know, right?
Would you be, and the good thing about having you come on right now is there is so much going on, but also I think we're, part of the bill is being read tomorrow, like the third appointment of the, C-218, whatever, after we record. I know we're going to record early tomorrow. Obviously the vote on Monday. So, hopefully this all goes well and we can have you back again when there's, it's so tough to schedule these. Do you feel confident that the vote goes forward on Monday?
I'm feeling pretty confident. I mean, everything that I am led to believe is that, and everything that I understand is that, the CFL is very much planning as if they're starting on August 5th. I think just based on the way things are moving in this country and vaccines are rolling and provinces are coming out with their reopening plans, and most of the reopening plans have some sort of stadium capacity. Here where I am in Alberta, if we hit our target here in the next little bit, like we're already at 67%, over 67% eligible people vaccinated. And if we hit 70%, then that means we're going to have full capacity and no restrictions. So, we're on track in Alberta to have, 50,000 people at Commonwealth Stadium in Edmonton and 35,000 people at McMahon Stadium here in Calgary. So I am confident that it's going to go through. I am. Again, I read the things. I see what Justin Dunk is putting out there, and I see what Jamie Nye is talking about. And I see all these very smart CFL people talking about, this or that or what the worries might be. But yeah, for everything that I'm led to believe, I think that it's going to go through. I think we're going to be playing football on August 5th. And I can't, it would be hard to wrap my head around no CFL season this year. It really would be. I just can't. I can't see a world where we're not playing CFL football this year, despite all the uncertainty and despite the fact that it's not confirmed as of yet.
Yeah, because that was going to obviously be my follow-up was Justin Duncan. I can't remember if it was yesterday or earlier this week about, there's still those couple of teams, right? And we kind of all know who they are. But, if it's not going to be enough fans or it's not going to be, I just get worried about that. Because I just, as someone, with the XFL and everything, I've just had the rug. I feel like we've all, on our side, had the rug pulled out a lot. And obviously the CFL people last year with everything was just, a disaster how that came and kind of it was like it just never happened, right? So I guess I always prepare for the worst, but I still in the back of my head, I just am really terrified about that.
And again, until it's done and until you've got a sign off and says, yes, they're playing and we're going to be seeing football and training camp start on this date and kickoff is on this date. But everything I know from league office and having spoken with Randy Ambrosie, the commissioner, a few times, and having talked with people with the team in this city and different people I know across the league, like everything even talking with different players, everything is going forward as if there is going to be a season. And I know, they have backup plans, they have contingency plans. There's always there's things that are completely out of the league's control. Like who knows where things go, and maybe there's setbacks with virus. We don't know those things, but everybody is working under the impression that August 5th is an attainable date. And because of that, as much as there's always that thing in the back of your head, I cover the NHL on a daily basis here in Calgary too, and everything was pointing towards them playing this season that is almost complete now. But back in December, everything was going forward as if they were playing. But there's always this thing in the back of your head. You're like, okay, well, they haven't announced it yet. Why haven't they announced it yet? But I actually think the CFL is going about it the right way. Right from the get-go, they said that the middle of June is going to be when they present a schedule matrix to their board of governors, and that is kind of the last possible date they could go forward with that. And by going, so when the NHL, for instance, went about their bubble restart last summer, they waited until the last possible minute to announce where they were going to play, because they wanted to make sure they had the most accurate, up-to-date information so they could make the most informed decision with the best chance of being able to execute. And that's what I think the CFL is doing here right now. They could have come out with a schedule 3 weeks ago, but why? If you can go until the very latest date and present the best possible schedule to be executed, I think that's the way that you need to go about it. And Commissioner Ambrosi has been, I think, and I know different people have different opinions, but I think especially with this return to play, they've been really transparent about what it's going to take. And they've been very open with the fact that, okay, August 5th is the target, but maybe it's August 7th, or maybe it has to be August 12th. And maybe they don't start all their games in the East Division. Maybe teams are starting on the road more than they usually would be to accommodate things and be able to be in a better place. And so I really do. When I spoke to the commissioner in early April, he said this to me. He said this in a lot of his other interviews at that time. He said, we've got backup plans to our backup plans, and then those are double backed up, and we got contingency plans to that. And I really do believe it. I think the CFL has got 5 or 6 different working plans to be able to execute a 2021 season. And let's be honest, it would do a lot of damage if they didn't play in 2021. And I think that the league knows that. The players know that. The fact there's been dialogue between the players and the league going all the way back to February, I'm feeling confident that everything's going to go through, and we're going to get an announcement on the schedule here in the next little while.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question, was talk about Ambrosi and we harp on it too, because XFL, I mean, it's even just this week there was like misquoted stuff about starting in months, and I don't know how much you've been following that. We can get into the XFL stuff later, but we harp on transparency a lot, because I feel like what the league lacks in doing, people like you and I, Justin Dunk, Hodge, then you're like the battering ram bullet shield, right? Because like the XFL isn't saying anything right now. So all the people that are kind of covering the league and we get all this. I have worried about these backup plans and stuff, because I don't feel like there's been, and I know we're newer to covering the CFL, and I have heard that it's been more transparent and more open than previously, but it feels, I mean, we haven't heard anything from league offices in months now, it feels like.
Well, I mean, I guess we haven't heard anything definitive since the return to play in early April. But even at that time, they said we need to see how the vaccine rollout goes in this country. And between, I guess it was late April, I think it was April 21st is when they came out with their announcement of a return to play. So here we are almost 2 months later. And I mean, the acceleration in vaccines here has gone, rapid fire. Like, we were a little bit behind where you were south of the border, and we didn't start doing it as rapidly and as widespread. But once we did, it went really quick. And so so there's that, and that has ramped up significantly. But what I think is, and I know that Dave Naylor at TSN had a report out there this week about it. What they said at the get-go is, okay, we're going to continue our dialogue. This is our plan. This is what we need. And we're going to present in mid-June to the different governors, the 9 governors around the league. And that's what we seem to be on track with. So, if all of a sudden we get different news come next week, and if we're talking June 14th, June 15th, and now all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, there's a hitch in the season, or it doesn't sound well, that's where I think we'll need to hear from the league again. That's where I think maybe we need to hear from Commissioner Ambrosi again. I haven't, and this is just my personal opinion, I haven't really felt the need to hear a whole lot about it, because since that announcement, everything has gone the way you'd want it to go. Everything has developed in a positive way in this country, and everything that needed to be hit. Like, we got fans back in NHL buildings. I know they're full in the States, but the fact there were 2,500 people in Montreal for 3 games now, that's a significant step here. And that and the fact that that's going to increase, and we have governments in different provinces in Saskatchewan and Alberta saying, even in BC, their top doctors said that they believe that there can be fans. And the league didn't say there needs to be full capacity. They said they need to have fans, significant amounts of fans. And we've heard since then that like 15, 20, 25%, whatever that might be. I think that's going to be really doable in enough CFL buildings. Montreal, Calgary, Saskatchewan, Edmonton, maybe BC, Winnipeg and Manitoba's a little further behind. There's a big push going on to get stadium capacity in the 3 in Ontario, which would cover 3 more teams. So I don't know. Everything just seems like it's been on track. So we haven't needed to hear from anybody since late April. If all of a sudden we run into a setback here in the next few weeks, then yeah, I think that it might be more appropriate to hear from Commissioner Ambrosi again to get a little bit of an update as to where things stand.
Just for to play devil's advocate, I think the fact that even when we're talking about the numbers of fans, the fact that you're like, well, it might need to be 10, 15, 20%, even we don't even know those numbers that it would need to be, right? I mean, that, like, when people ask, like, well, what would you want the league to talk about? What would you want, because we had one of our episodes a while ago was like, silence or something, sound, we're not hearing anything. And people said, well, what would you want to hear? Well, like, that to me would be a great, like, we need to hit, average, 22% capacity across, that's just one example, right? The fact that we're potentially voting here in whatever the math is, 5 days, 6 days, and we don't know potentially what those numbers would be for the numbers of fans, percentage wise.
Fair. But I think what's important there is that, what does significant mean? And I think that different teams, and that's why, because we're talking about such a weird limbo world that we're living in right now, I tend to believe that, like, not giving firm targets on things like this is kind of the way to go, and not giving, like, even all along, it's a target date August 5th, but maybe kickoff is August 6th, and on August 5th is just like an area. So to have benchmarks is important, but to not make them 100% black and white and firm, I think that's important, because, as we know, I mean, it's still so unpredictable, and it feels like it's getting more and more predictable, and you can start to predict things going in the right direction and see it developing that way. But I still think you want to give yourself an out. So I personally don't fault the league for, at this point, not having those. And I get what you're saying, and I think there's a lot of fans who would probably be very much of that same mindset. That's like, okay, well, we want to know everything, but that can set you up to not fail, but can set you up to not be able to hit your targets, and then all of a sudden it creates panic. Whereas here, if you have internal targets and don't put them directly out in the public, you can still hit them and be able to get there. That's why, we've heard from the Lions and what a significant amount of fans might be there, and that's going to be different to what it is in Calgary, and ticket prices have. So I don't mind them doing that at this stage of the game. And I think once we figure out what the result of this vote is going to be, and what the actual status of the league is, and if we get news next week that, yeah, we're going full bore August 5th, let's go, then I think starting to have a little bit more in terms of measurables and actual empirical targets to hit, then I think that becomes more important.
And that's fair. I mean, that's a totally fair. I mean, again, we're creating questions here, right? But I think that I see both sides of it. I definitely see wanting to have, but I just feel like my big thing is it's like every day, the way the world is nowadays, like every day is an eternity. I mean, it just feels like with all of this stuff and, when they announced it and it was like 100 days or whatever until it was, I'm like, God, that just feels like forever. I mean, that feels like so long. So that's where I get from it is it does get very tiring, right? Having the same questions and concerns all the time about it.
Well, and think about it and I get that because I mean, if you're a CFL fan, and I write for the league, and I've been lucky enough to write for the league the entire way through. We haven't played a game in this league since November 2019. Like we're talking about 18 months almost between games, and that there's a sizable group of people that love this league that just want to see it back, and they miss seeing their team. They miss going out on a Friday night in the summertime and being able to have a couple beers and watch a game. So I think there's a lot of people who are just like a lot of fans are like, I just want to see it back. So I get it. I get the impatience and I get the, like, we just want to know, but it feels like we're going to know here pretty soon. And it feels like we're kind of getting to that point. And I'll say this is just personally for me, but man, have I learned a whole lot more about patience during this whole thing.
Wow.
And you have, because my income is very dependent on sports leagues playing. And there was in March 2020 when things shut down and I didn't know, my income's very dependent on whether or not the NHL plays, for instance. You're like, well, are they going to come back? Like, and you kind of just have to, you just kind of had to learn to, I don't know. And I've, being a guy that does not like uncertainty, and being a guy that doesn't do so well if I don't know exactly what's coming up in the near and not so near future, I've kind of had to learn how to deal with it. And so, but I get it. I really do get it because CFL fans want their league back. They want their team back. There's been a lot of exciting things that have happened. Free agency was bonkers this year. The draft was a lot of fun. There's been some things to sink your teeth into, but they haven't been on the field yet. We haven't seen these guys in the field in a long time. I get it.
Yeah, and I mean, and for the fans, and I mean the players too. I just can't, and not that we're like the biggest, but we cover the spring league, right? Matt Mengel, he's going to be playing for the Alouettes. He's been on the show. Cole Boozer, that's playing right now down there. We just found out today he got signed by the Alouettes, right? Yep. And he was on a couple weeks ago. I mean, I'm through the moon for him, right? I mean, this is someone that we followed for the last 2 years now with everything. He's been on the show a bunch, and so that to me, I'm like, God, I hope all this goes well for all these guys. I mean, that ultimately, I mean, the fans too, but to see these guys and how excited they are to get signed and go up there and that's what I want, because that's my fear is that, like that sucks for the fans, right? I mean, but like people like you and they have been on our show that cover the league like professionally to get paid. And then these players, I mean, for everybody, I mean, I'm a wedding videographer, right? I mean, this is just like, this is totally different world than when it's, people that are trying to live and die with what's happening up there. I mean,
and the thing with this league is that, yes, it's 9 teams. And so, but it gives hundreds of jobs to football players that wouldn't have another way to go. And you take a look at whether it's United Football League or USFL or XFL or any of the other different leagues that have tried to pop up in the last 20 years. They've given jobs, but it's always been temporarily. Yeah. And the one thing that you could count on is the Canadian Football League being an outlet for, you've got the ratio and you've got Canadians that need to play on each team. But like if you're a really good, there's a lot of good receivers in Div 1 and Div 2 football, right? And so, or Div 1 and Div 1 AA football. You've got a lot of good players. And there's 32 NFL teams or 30 NFL teams and 32 NFL teams. And you've got finite rosters, and to have the CFL as a second place to go, and a second place to go with other elite talent and places for really good college football players to be able to continue their football career has always been one of the things that has made this league so great. And this year it didn't exist. And I felt awful for a lot of these. I know a lot of coaches really well. You get to know players really well. And it's just like, you kind of have to reevaluate. You're like, okay. And that's why we've seen certain players. It's like, I've had to retire, even though they could still play in this league. 1 year without being able to play, that's a significant hit. And they've gone and explored other career opportunities and realized that, at this point, because of this, I'm going to have to stick with this career and not go back to football. So it's been really too bad to not have that extra outlet for players and that extra option for players. And, it was cool to see MBT, McLeod Bethel Thompson, go play it in the spring league, and a couple of other guys get some opportunities in the spring league. And, that's something that a lot of guys didn't have. And, Reggie Bagleton and Nate Hawley and some really good players in the CFL caught on in the NFL this year. But still, like, the vast majority of guys didn't get to play a whole season. And that's the other thing. I mean, it's huge for the league. It's huge for visibility. It's huge for the business model to play again this year. But it's all these players need to play. And I think that's going to be that's why I'm so happy that the PA and the league have been talking since February. They've got their ducks in a row in that regard. It feels like things are positively moving in the direction it needs to too. So yeah, these guys need to play. You're right. It's really too bad that hundreds of players lost an entire season of pro football in the prime of their careers.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, and you can't make up that time, right? I mean, we have guys on, that were in the spring league. Brian Scott, he was like the MVP, and he's messaging me like, well, okay, the XFL doesn't come back next year. What do I mean, there's just no option for people. I want to get your talking about other places and the backups that people can play in. What are your thoughts on all this XFL mumbo jumbo we have going on?
I don't know. I don't know. It's so. So here's the thing that interests me the most. So when the CFL announced their return to play plan, there'd already been this announcement of the partnership with the XFL and a partnership that, involves, we don't know exactly what at this point. But one of the things that was really interesting was that in all of Commissioner Ambrosie's interviews, he spoke very openly about how the CFL's business model needs to change and how this pandemic has really underlined they need to make some changes to their business model, the way they go about their revenue and all of that. And so that to me has left so many different possibilities on the table for what this XFL sharing of ideas, partnership might end up being. I see the rumors of a merger. I know there's a lot of people who think that's going to happen. I see plenty of thought that, well, maybe both leagues go about their seasons and there's some sort of crossover games. That would be super interesting. Maybe to start, it's just as simple as we're talking about a sharing of ideas. And here's the XFL with the financial backing and the marketing background and the marketing might of The Rock, of having Dwayne Johnson behind the league. You're like, okay, that's a significant thing to have. And there's probably some benefit in learning some things from the way the XFL goes about their business. And look, the CFL has had some ups and downs, and the league has had their struggles at times. They've had their times when they're thriving more. But the CFL has been, save for this pandemic year when the pandemic hurt everybody, CFL has been able to, for 60 plus years, go about their business uninterrupted as the other professional sports league in North America, and has been able to survive and thrive and continue, as we talked about earlier, giving a place for players. So they've done something right over the last 6+ decades. And I think other leagues like the XFL that have had two different incarnations that have not been able to go long term. I think there's a lot that can be learned from other leagues about how the CFL has sustained itself with this absolute juggernaut. There's two football juggernauts, right? There's the NFL and there's the NCAA. And yet the CFL has been able to survive and carve out its own place in the football world and do that profitably and do that while still being able to have a business model that works for a long time. And now for them to admit that the business model, they could do some updating, I think that's a really important step. So I don't know, long answer to, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I'm interested regardless. I know there's a ton of people are terrified about a merger. I get that. CFL is a very traditional league, but I'd be interested in it. And whatever can make it so that football is an option outside of the NFL professionally and like a sustainable option. That to me is super important. And so I'm fascinated to see where this goes, whether it is the full meal deal of a straight on merger, or if it is just an idea sharing thing. Anywhere in between those two, I am fascinated to see where it goes. And personally, I'm all for it. I really am.
Are you, and I was actually thinking about this today. I was messaging the other guys in our writers kind of group. I really put the vitriol, all this stuff, losing the 3 downs, all this. I really do put about 90% of the blame on this on June Jones and that first interview he did. It feels like years ago now, and it was like they came out, I think it was like the next day, he's like, it's going to be 4 downs, the Rock's taking over. But are you, so I do put the blame on him. You cover the league, live in Canada, all these things. Are you surprised? In my wildest dreams, it would never feel as vitriolic as it has been with like America's coming to steal the Canadian out of the CFL and they're going to take over. And I never thought it would get so, you know what I mean? It's very tense. And I will tell you, there's not one person that listens to our show that has ever wanted to change anything about anything.
Well, and here's the thing. The CFL, because it is an all, since the early 1990s, an all Canadian league. Right. I know they tried the U.S. expansion. I saw you guys talking about that too. The American expansion was what it was. I mean, they had some successful franchises. They had some good crowds. It was what it was. And did it work out ultimately the way that it was envisioned? No, but it's a part of the CFL's history. But for the last 2.5, 3 decades, this has been an all-Canadian league again. And there is a lot of pride from hardcore CFL fans about the differences in the games. And it's not just CFL fans. It's the football community in Canada, because we play 3 downs and with 110-yard fields in high school, and our college game. It's all so Canadian football is not just the CFL. Those rules start from there and trickle down throughout the entire Canadian football system. So I think there's a lot of it's unique, and we hold those things very, very dear. We're like, yeah, this is part of what makes our brand of football unique and our brand of football. And I get that. But, when I think about the potential of 2 leagues merging and knowing that they, fundamentally do go about things a little bit differently, the way they play the game on the field, I think you can find happy mediums. I don't think it needs to be this as contentious a thing as it is. I think there's plenty of ways to get around it. There's plenty of ways to retain the tradition of the CFL game, which I also hold dear. There is nothing better than, for me as just a hardcore football fan, to just flip games and you watch a CFL game on Friday, they do their Friday night football, then maybe on Saturday they've got 2 games on a Saturday. I can flip between, in a normal year when the world isn't the way, to flip between an Edmonton BC game and then go watch an Alabama LSU game. You're like, okay, it's football, and yet it's different. It's different, but they're still elite athletes. They're still the best football players on the planet. and I love the differences between the game. I don't know how much, I don't know how much you've dove into what the CFL game is and just some of the differences. Like pre-snap, I love when I talk to an American for the first time seeing a CFL game, they think it's chaos at pre-snap, and I'm like, yes. But it's not it's not chaotic. It is all it's like this beautiful orchestra, and these receivers, the way they time the cadence and they hit the line right as it's incredible. Yeah. Like they're running around and then boom, and here they go they're on the routes, and so I would be devastated if we lost that. Yeah. But I don't think we have to. I don't think we're going to. And I'm with you. I don't think it needs to be this contentious butting of heads thing. Both leagues. There's benefit in them talking to one another and them learning from one another and trying to have the other one elevate each to the next level. I think there's plenty of common ground to find. It doesn't bother me the same way that I've seen a lot online.
Yeah, I will say I do am swaying more and more towards I think CFL fans will be very fine with I think we'll be okay. I had fears before, and I've definitely softened my stance on what I felt was the one league, one rule book thing for a long time. And I am softening my stance on that with, information that I've learned and, changing my opinions on that. It is funny because when we started covering because we were going to cover the CFL anyway. And Paul, my co-host, the first couple of weeks he was talking, oh yeah, I'm watching all these YouTube videos and he's watching the Grey Cup breakdowns, all this stuff. And we get offline. I'm like, were you making did you really go on? And he's like, oh yeah, no, he's like, I've spent the last, I'm like, okay, good. Because, Paul sometimes is a little dry. And I was like, no, I'm glad that, we are, I'm like, we covered the fan controlled football. They got 5 downs. They're playing on Twitch. I mean, we covered the spring league, we got the US. I mean, I'm like, we're very open on the Markcast to kind of any sort of, amalgamation that is a ball and fields and whatever. Before I let you go, because you've been so gracious, I don't want to hold you up forever. And I don't want to make this feel like a 3-hour episode with everything. We got a jam-packed show. We picked a good week to have you on. I want the sports betting stuff. I have been, following this. We had Tom Manek on last week talking about this. To the life of me, a league that loses $20 million a year, Ray Ambrosie's talked, 10, 20 million. At best, starting out, this is going to make back $20 million a year. But seeing it as this big boon to break even on that, I mean, is that and I'm not trying to be facetious in my asking of this question, is that as big a deal as it is that the CFL will just not be losing that money? Is that why this is so, you get what I'm saying? It's to add this whole new wrinkle to everything just to be in the black.
Well, I think why it is such a potential big deal, the way that I read it, is that I think there's a real opportunity for the CFL to kind of go all in and really and really differentiate themselves potentially in terms of the way they use sports betting. And it's on both sides of the border now. We're seeing it become more and more legalized. It's not just in Vegas and Nevada anymore. It's now starting to become more and more prevalent in the US. And I think that you're starting to see, even with some of the television coverage south of the border, you're starting to see live in-game betting. It's more of a it's more of a part of our broadcast and our television broadcast. But I go take a look at what it's like overseas and the way that soccer is presented in the way they go about their live betting and the way they integrate it in the UK and in other spots in Europe. And I think there's a real opportunity for the CFL to kind of dive head first in and be a little bit ahead of the curve as to some of the other major professional sports leagues. All of them are embracing it. All of them are seeing the value in it. But, if the CFL were to take it 2-3 steps further and really start to integrate it into how their games are telecast on TV and how much they use that as part, I think there's a really big opportunity. And I think that the league does too, because I don't think a professional sports commissioner is talking about it as promisingly and as excitedly as Commissioner Ambrosi is if they don't see them really utilizing it in a big way. Look, sports gambling is a billion upon billion dollar industry in North America. So if they're ready to utilize it and really dive headfirst into it, I think there's a really big money making opportunity, revenue making opportunity for the CFL, and that's why I'm so excited to see, when it eventually gets written into Canadian law, how some different leagues and different properties in Canada go about it. And the CFL's had one of their partners is Leo Vegas, and so they've definitely had some partnerships in the past. Well, here's an opportunity to, whether it's Leo Vegas or another company, to make that as like the official this of the CFL or the. I just think there are so many opportunities with it becoming legal to integrate it, and that's the word that I would use, to integrate it into your product and into your brand.
Do you think that the CFL with like current, and Ambrosi seems to be right, more expansive thinking, obviously with these CFL or XFL talks, obviously with the global stuff. I mean, because this is all I've heard forever. We come into this and we hear, CFL management's a little sleepy sometimes. It's a little tired sometimes. It's a little behind the times, but yet they're also going to now know how to integrate this $1 billion industry into their game. That's where because I'm not like, I'm told both things, right? Like I'm told the CFL. And so that's where my dichotomy is, where I'm at.
And I understand, like, I get that. And there's always criticism out there about the way the league has gone about their business, or they're behind here, or they're not. And sometimes that criticism has been warranted, for sure. And I even think that they've understood that from not being able to get last season off the ground. I think there's been some admission that okay, it was hard, but we're going to take lessons from that and apply them to getting the season off the ground this year. But what I think is important, because I think that's those are fair questions and those are fair criticisms. But what I think is different now is that there's been this pause since November 2019, and everything that I know about the league and from the people that I talked to is that the minute that the 2020 season was canceled and they said that we're not going to be able to do this, they went right to work when the commissioner says that the revenue model needs to change, like, for him to say that publicly, to me, tells me that there is a behind closed doors understanding that there needs to be some significant changes, overhaul, whatever word you want to use, to some of the way they go about things. And so I think that this potential bill being written into law in the next number of weeks and months is something they've had on their radar throughout the entire time, and something that they have been working at and figuring out how they could integrate for a long time. So that's why I'm a little bit, that's why I'm feeling pretty optimistic about the way that they will integrate it into their brand and their product going forward.
My last question about the sports betting. I saw, because, obviously they're going to do the third reading here, tomorrow as we record, yesterday as the episode, it's like this weird time flux, but
yeah.
We presume it passes, right? I mean, is that are you just operating just in general that this is going to pass?
I would be stunned if it did. I mean, for governments, for provincial and the federal government, there is too much money on the table for them not to at this point. I would be stunned if it doesn't go through.
Okay, so if it's passing, I saw Dunk a while ago. It's like, well, like we could get this going by Labor Day. I mean, is this a next year? Is this a next season thing realistically? I think
that you can start this season, but I think come the 2022 season is because I mean there's so much else that you got to figure out what your schedule is going to look like. And there's a lot of moving parts to get 2021 off the ground. I think it's going to happen, but there's a lot that needs to happen and a lot that needs to be figured out. So I think to fully get the full on product and the full on experience of it, yeah, probably the start of the 2022 season. That's probably realistic. But I do think JD's right. I do think Dunk's right that, you know, you could probably have some of this stuff if it's all thumbs up and we're good to go with it. I think you can have some of that very much in the works and starting to be a revenue creator and revenue driver for this season. And I even look, like I look at other leagues, like the NHL, for instance, and I keep going back to it, but it's so much part of what we do in Calgary. But I mean, the NHL has done things that they would never have done this season because they lost so much money the year before. They're trying to do different things to try to make up for it. So they sponsored the names of their divisions. They would have never done that. They got helmet ads. They're doing things that are very much non-traditional, and in a sport that is full of traditionalists, that doesn't always happen. But it did because of like, oh, we lost how many 9 figures last year? Yeah, we should probably do some things to make up that revenue. So everything's being sold, and so I think that for the CFL, if they could make up some of the lost revenue by being able to capitalize on some of this sports gambling revenue and some of the sponsorship or different avenues they could go down, I could see it starting this year for sure.
You've been so gracious with your time. Any other hot takes before we let you go about anything I did or didn't ask you about?
Oh, I don't think so. I can't wait for you to like dive right in and, you know, start to see games on a regular basis. And I just, like, there are some damn good players in this league, man. Like I take a look at, you know, the quarterbacks that we have in Western Canada, for instance. You know, you've got Bo Levi Mitchell, who he could have been in the NFL a couple of years ago, decided to come back. Trevor Harris is a really good quarterback, and Mike Riley throws the ball a ton. And when Mike Riley's healthy, that guy's a threat for 6,000 passing yards every year. Like, I'm just excited for you to see some of the athletes and see the game. And so I'm stoked, and I'm so happy that you guys are on board, because I think it's good to have another, and especially south of the border, to have it in the U.S. and to have it be more in the football fans' front of mind. I think it'll be really good. So I'm just excited for you to dive into the product and see it in all its glory, because when you get, there are things that happen in CFL games that don't happen in other leagues. It's unpredictable, it's fun, it's explosive, and the talent is really high end.
Yeah, if you would have told, if I would have told Paul, you know, back in August when we were starting all this, that we would be covering CFL stuff now and the USFL resurgence and kind of all this other stuff, it was very remarkable journey it's been on. But it's been fun, and we are here now, and we are adapting and moving forward with everything. It's been very remarkable and crazy.
It's good to have you. It's awesome to have you guys on board. It's a fun league.
Cool. Well, thank you again, Pat, so much for your time. We'll do the big intro and stuff in the show. When it's just me on here, it's a little more casual with all this, but I really appreciate your time. I hope when we get, you know, moving here into the season, we can have you on again. And yeah, we're really, the elk stuff got us excited, you know, big changes, you know, things moving in a positive direction have us excited. So I feel good about it.
It's good to be on. That was awesome. I'm glad we could finally do this.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Support for the Markcast brought to you by Manscaped. They are the best in men's below-the-waist grooming, champions of the world, as I like to say. They offer precision-engineered tools for your family jewels, and they just launched the Lawnmower 4.0. Read 4.0. You have it. Over 2 million men worldwide trust Manscaped. And with this exclusive offer for you, you can get 20% off and free worldwide shipping. Yes, even to Canada, with the code Markcast at manscaped.com. Reed,
I'm awkwardly leaning away from my microphone so you can see my wonderful Manscaped shirt. This is a great shirt they sent. It says, like, your balls will thank you.
And we can't read because the camera's... Yeah. We don't want you to adjust your camera, but just take our word for it. It says your balls will thank you. Yeah,
use the code Markcast. Don't use the Homer Nation, 3 Down Nations code. People seem to like that when I talk about that. So use the code Markcast. Stick it to 3 Down Nation. Don't use Homer Nation, their code, and use the code Markcast, 20% off for free shipping.
By the way, I love the LED light that's on the 4.0 trimmer. That is great. That is such a great thing to, like, you know, shadows kind of, when you're in the bathroom and you're trying to cut around, shadows kind of might block, you know, a stray hair here or there. And that might be the one stray hair that might be tugging in certain situations. Like it might get too long and it tugs, and it's just like, it's painful. And he's walking away because it's awkward right now, but it's true. It's true. And then he's like kind of hacking because, you know, it's like kind of a disgusting thing to talk about, but it's true. Like we got to keep these things cleared up. We got to keep them cleared up. And dudes, come on. You know that if you trim, it looks different. It looks bigger. Come on, let's be honest. We're men here. We can talk about this stuff, right? We can talk about this, right?
Good.
It's like Reed is turning red like the color of my jersey right now because I'm getting very graphic in detail. I'll just leave you with this. The 4.0 trimmer, I've been using Manscaped for a while now. The 4.0 trimmer is definitely the game changer in terms of everything below the waist. Trust me when I say this, you'll want to pick one up and do one now. That's just so important to get these. Exercise some hygiene.
Take care of yourself.
Take care of yourself. Get, as Will Purvis would say, give yourself some self-care before you get some care. Something like that. He's great with slogans. I don't know. Anyway, once again, you can get 20% off free shipping with the code Markcast at manscaped.com. That's 20% off free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code Markcast. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Yeah, no problem.
Any preface, anything before we get into it? I just figured we kind of talk about, thoughts, everything going on, what you're doing now, past stuff with, I just think you're a good person that might have a lot of thoughts about what's going on.
Yeah, you know what? I'll be honest. I think back to when I was there before, and when I thought about all the rule changes, the dash for the toss, those types of things, I thought it was really hokey. Names on the jerseys. They were trying to just, make it like, I was in Vegas, like the outlaw kind of league kind of thing. Vince McMahon, when he had the meetings, he said, say whatever it is you want to the cameras when they're in your face. And it was just completely opposite of what I was used to in the CFL. And then obviously the NFL, I mean, there's not a chance that you could do or say any of the things. So it was, I thought it was a little hokey, but then once it started to go, I thought, okay, there's some good football, but the problem was, and I'll be honest, I haven't followed a lot of the past XFL, so I'm not sure a lot of the changes, but just comparison of the first one. You had a bunch of good football players, obviously. There was a lot of guys that went from the XFL to the NFL, but it was kind of too much wrestling at that time, and it took a little while to get to the football and bring more good football people in and, throw out the wrestling commentators and that type of thing. And by then it was kind of too late. So, I mean, I think that now talking about the CFL and the XFL's got all the media hype. I think, and I'll just say it, the American way of doing things when it comes to marketing and advertising for football anyway is completely different and I'll say better than the CFL. There's lots of things that the CFL can improve on and do. I listened to that last podcast you had or you sent me, and the one gentleman on there, I forget his name, was saying how the marketing, try and get a hat, an CFL merchandise, things like that. It's just not there. I mean, I walk into the airport here in Vancouver and I'll see the Toronto Blue Jays, hockey teams, and maybe the Saskatchewan Roughriders merch. But I'm like, it's terrible. You don't even get to see the CFL stuff. So I think that bringing them together, it could be good. But the one thing that I haven't heard anybody talk about is the ratio. I mean, we've got a mandate in Canada where you have to have so many Canadians on the field. And I was playing when the CFL merged in the States with Baltimore and Sacramento, and they could play with a full team of Americans. And I think the only reason that one year it kind of was dominated by the CFL is because it took a little while for the Americans to kind of catch on to the game. The coaching didn't quite understand all the rules and all the intricacies, of the kicking game as well. So I think it would have been just a matter of time where, there's a lot more American players playing the CFL game, and with just the amount of people that are down there, we wouldn't be able to compete. So then I think it would get gobbled up. And what rules are you playing? I mean, there's so many different things to think about.
First off, because I just have a million different ways we could go with all this. I think, and we'll include all that too if you want, because I think this is all great. But Paul McCallum here, tremendous life history. Rob Vanstone will help put this in contact. Friend of the podcast. I've done all the reading and everything about everything that you've accomplished. Just a wealth of knowledge. And I guess first off, how did you wind up in the original XFL back in 2001?
Well, that's an interesting story, and it's a bit of a long one. In Canada, playing, just started my career, was going to get cut because the club, BC, wasn't going to make the playoffs. The general manager at the time, Eric Tillman, told me that he is going to be leaving and going to the NFL Europe. I've got a British passport. He called up Jim Kreiner, went over and played in NFL Europe with Scottish Claymores, and won the World Bowl. Coach really liked me, came back to Canada. Then I heard about the XFL, find out that Coach Kreiner is going to be coaching in the XFL. It was my option year. I picked up the phone and said, hey, I'd like to come down. It was my option year, off season. I could do it. And he said, 100%, job's yours. So that was it.
Did you were talking about Vince saying stuff, you could talk to the camera, say with everyone. Did you have a lot of interaction? I mean, because obviously in the XFL, this last iteration, Oliver Luck was kind of in charge. Vince was very hands off. Did you have a lot of interaction with Vince in that first go round?
No, what happened was Dick Ebersol and Vince McMahon came to training camp. And I believe there was a training camp we had one in Vegas, and I think there was 4 teams there, and the other one was in Florida or Atlanta, I can't recall. And so they came in and did their rounds, and they had all of the players in a hotel, and we were told what they wanted, what did they expect from us, what their vision was of the league. So, he made it clear. He said, look, guys, we're going to be different. He wanted to compete with the NFL, which obviously you can't. But so one of the things was, he wanted everyone to have fun. He wanted the guys on the field to have fun. He didn't want it to be as militant as the NFL is. So, if the camera's in your face, speak up, get in the camera's face, be animated is, I think, the word he used. And, and that was kind of taken from the wrestling. It's all theatrics, and it's about entertainment.
Were the players, were they excited to be, you said you picked up the phone, wanted to go. I mean, what was the overall consensus? Was this going to be a success, or was what is going to happen here?
It was, it was really interesting. In the locker room, in the trainer's room, you got to meet all the new people and players. And I remember I was in the trainer's room, a bunch of young guys, and we had just heard that, you can pick what you want to put on your name bar in the back. And, I was in there with Rod Smart, he hate me, and a bunch of other guys. And then they all just turned to me, and they were thinking of the replacements. They wanted me to put laces out on the back of my, jersey. And then they were saying they wanted me to go out and kick an extra point with a cigarette in my hand, and just to have fun. Right. So there was that aspect of it, the young guys. And then there was there was some serious guys that wanted to get back in the NFL, and this was their platform. And then there was a few other players that had already been in the NFL, and they just wanted to have fun. He actually was bouncing around, just thought, I'm going to come back, and, he wanted his kids to see him play, because I guess he had some young kids. So it was a big blend of different people and different stages of their career. It wasn't all a bunch of young guys wanted to go back to the NFL. And so it was a good locker room, and it was a good vibe. I think all of the teams kind of had that same kind of blend of players. There was a lot of young guys, a lot of, some NFL veterans. They brought for, I guess, big name players that had finished and wanted to come back kind of thing and do some things. So, it was an interesting blend of people.
I'm going to do something funny here. Give me 2 seconds and it's going to be worth it. Slightly off camera here is my official XFL Owen He Hate Me jersey from the Las Vegas. I didn't have time to put this on this morning. I probably should have, but we got this here. We'll hang it. But no, I mean a lot of tremendous excitement. I mean, I remember I was a kid when 01, and I remember the kickoff on NBC and Vince screaming and all that. And I didn't even really know because I just watched wrestling. I was just a WWE guy. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll go check this out. And I wasn't even really into football. But you said you thought, well, okay, so you're playing for the Outlaws, right? And you're one of the claims to fame, right, is you scored the first ever points kicked, right, or scored in the first XFL game. Is that correct? Do you remember that? Any specifics about that?
Oh yeah, that's quite funny actually, because there was no nets in the back of the end zones. So I kicked the ball. It was the first points ever scored, and I think I actually ran into the guy. There was a game. We had the West Coast game. There was an East Coast game. I scored the first points, and I think I beat the other guy out by maybe a minute or something like that. And he was like, damn, you got me. But I kicked the ball into the stands, and then the guy who got the ball wanted me to sign it. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, I'll sign it for you. And then I thought, well, actually, you know what? I'd like to get that ball. Do you mind if I buy it from you? And I think he wanted like $5,000 for it. I was like, dude, I kicked the ball, and like, I'll get you another ball, or I'll do something else for it. I'll give you some tickets or whatever it may be. He's like, nope, I want $5,000. I'm like, yeah, you can keep it. And then, when things went sideways, sure enough, I get the phone call. How about $1,000? I'm like, yeah, no, you can keep it. It's okay. You got it. But it was interesting. Fan interaction was pretty cool, pretty crazy in Las Vegas, I tell you. The cheerleaders, attractive young ladies, guys were drinking and just going crazy in the stands. And yeah, it was a different football crowd, I think, than normal to start with. But it was pretty cool.
People would pay good money, I'm sure, for that football nowadays. That guy, that is, I think that's a pretty cool. I think that's a pretty cool story with that. We have one of the guys that played in the spring league now that worked with the new XFL. He's selling some balls that he had kicked, and I know that there's just a lot of excitement for that. I think that's a pretty awesome story. I thought you were going to say there was no net in it, creamed someone in the head or something. That would have been.
Oh no! Well, I might have. I don't know. I mean, it was a fun league. I mean, the guys, you kick the ball, and I'd watch it because it'd just be big swarms of people going to get the balls every extra point or every field goal. But it was interesting. I think. I think the ratings were. I forget how they work, but they were like 12. There was scalpers getting $700 a ticket for that game, and there was lots of hype for that game, and it was pretty cool. I never went to a major college. I was a soccer player, and I went to Europe to play professional soccer. Quick story: came back, went down to the local park to watch my good buddies playing junior football, was community football, and I went down. BC Lions player personnel. I was walking his dog, saw me kick the ball. Went to practice for the last 2 weeks, signed me to training camp for the following year, and came back. I thought I can do this, and I asked if they'd give me some help. Maybe I could go on as a walk-on or something at Washington, and they're like, no, can't happen. You're a professional. And back then, that was in 1990. You got $3 a day for training camp. So, I was there for 2 weeks. So I got my $42. I'm like, you can have it back. Didn't work. But yeah, it was just it's a pretty interesting journey to say where I got to and all the fun that I had. It was pretty fun.
No, tremendous. I mean, tremendous career, tremendous life. When you're in, so we're in 01, we're going through, the football, like you said, it took a little while. I think just mostly because they rushed it right to the field. I mean, they did everything within that truncated, well, now here, and we're living through this week with, USFL, right, is going to be coming back here, supposedly. It's like history repeating itself again. But like, as it was going along, I think a lot of people left the first season really thinking it was going to come back, right? I mean, it wasn't until, am I speaking out of turn? Was that kind of the general sentiment?
No, absolutely. A coach at the end of the year, he spoke to a handful of players that he wanted back because he could only protect, I think, 9 players. And he asked me if I wanted to come back. I'm like, absolutely, I want to come back. And then, I was, like I said, it's in between seasons with the CFL and XFL. So I called the general manager back in Canada. I was like, look, I want to come back here again. So I want to make sure I can get out of my contract. I'm a kicker. I'm not going to, I'm not getting hurt, that type of thing. And they said no. Called the coach back, and I said in XFL and said he's not going to let me go. So they were going to give me a job in the off season. Give me a longer visa. I was going to be able to live in Vegas, get a job, and it was go. I was really excited. And because things started really strong, they faded. They changed the rules. Whether the gunners could leave on the kick or not, and all sorts of things. And I think at the end of the year, the league was starting to stabilize. Don't know. We lost a lot of the public, the ratings, TV ratings, and but I think it could have gotten stronger. Like I said, because it was getting more stable. So yeah, I was looking forward to it and everything else. I moved back to Canada, to get all my stuff ready to go back to Vegas. And I was driving out to the lake, and I get a phone call from my buddy and said that it had folded. I called the coach right away, gave me the explanation of what really happened. And I think it was just the TV rights with maybe TNT and McMahon fighting over the rights for the XFL. And obviously he just said, well, you're going to take your pick. Do you want the wrestling or nothing, kind of thing? So anyway, unfortunate, but yeah, everyone that I talked to was excited, was looking forward to it happening again. And just the business aspect of it, of course, that ended it.
Yeah, it's a shame, when these leagues come off, it had so much publicity behind it. And when you don't have everything, going your way right away. I mean, I even remember going back, like if you watch the highlights from the championship game, I mean, it's kind of, it's a little messy, it's a little, you really wish it, and then like you said, when you talk about the wrestling and all the components behind the scenes, same thing now with the XFL last year, there's all this other stuff, and, people want to blame, Vince and everything for going bankrupt, but he was dealing with the same stuff last year with WWE, right? Where, with COVID and being able to run events. So how did you find out that it wasn't coming back, or was that?
So yeah, like I said, I was driving to the lake and I found out. I called the coach, and he had said that I think NBC pulled out because they had lost too much money, but the other stations is TNT and another network in the southern states. They were all excited because their ratings were still pretty good, but NBC they had enough. They were out. And I think that the other stations kind of wanted to jump into the NBC role, and Vince said no, and they just couldn't come to an agreement. But even those other networks still had some business with Vince with the wrestling, and so he just leveraged that to say, I'm not going to give you whatever it is you need or want for the XFL, and if we're going to continue this, then maybe I won't give you the WWE is either. So they just pulled back and they shut the doors. So that's pretty much what I was told. Obviously I don't know all the exact details, but that's the gist of it.
So when you so now we're earlier this year now, you're living your life, you're a real estate agent, right? What did you think when you heard, you said you didn't follow the XFL right back in 2020, right?
Yeah, I wasn't right into that. I was busy going on, but yeah.
But you hear this now, you hear XFL, bought by The Rock, in talks with the CFL. What is your initial reaction to that?
Do it right. Like you said, and we discussed earlier, is too much flying by the seat of your pants the first time around. Changing the rules week to week, going back and forth, things like that. Have proper football people, that know what they're talking about and understand, instead of the wrestling, which I'm pretty sure, I don't think that mistake would happen again. The Rock has got a huge, big social media public following. He's a very well-spoken person. That's obvious. He's not, how do I put it? I think he's stepped far enough away from that, in the sense of he's been, he's in movies, and he talks a lot as a real person, as he's not always acting, So I think that it could be very beneficial, I think, believe it or not, having somebody like him to start the league again. There's been the two other failures, and I mean, let's face it, COVID had a lot to do with the last one. So I think there's lots of positive things for the XFL itself. How it would merge with the CFL, I don't even know if that's possible, with all of the two different rules of the game, just the whole thing. It just doesn't seem to be possible, in my opinion. How are we going to have you have to protect the CFL? I mean, you just straight up numbers in the population, with the amount of players playing in the States and up here, the Canadian players would just get gobbled up.
As someone that, obviously BC, we talk Toronto, we talk Montreal, these markets that maybe need some rehab or whatever. I mean, do you think the XFL, whatever this partnership is, could help with that? Or what do we do to help the CFL? Because I think, one thing that's come out from all of this is there are some shortcomings, right, that need to be bolstered somehow. So how do we do that if it's not with the XFL?
One of the main points, it's always been a bit of a stickler for me, is the high school football in Canada. They play NFL football. So, how are you going to have a young Canadian kid playing an American brand and style of football, American rules of football, on a Sunday or Saturday or whenever the game's played, relate to watching a Canadian game when the formations are different? You've got motion in the backfield. It's just we don't have the roots of the players. I mean, you go to the high schools and all you see them is they're relating to the NFL players because the kid's playing wideout and he's got Odell Beckham jersey on, and we have our Hall of Fame receivers up here like G. Roy Simon and Milt Stegall that played slot, because the game, a lot of the formation and a lot of the running and the motion is a slot. They seem to get the ball more. That there's no relationship between the two games, the high school and the Canadian game. So I think that with that, as well as the marketing, you just don't hear about it. The CFL, you blips and blurbs. Hockey is a Canadian sport. If I was playing and there was a huge we had a practice going on, which would be media day, and the hockey team had a signing, we wouldn't have any media at our practice. You know what I mean? And so it's sort of playing second fiddle. But I was speaking to one of the presidents a while back, and he was saying that but our TV ratings are better. When we have a rivalry between, say, Edmonton and Calgary, or Winnipeg and Saskatchewan playing, that football game on that day will be better than the hockey night in Canada, game of the night. So I don't know. I just don't know why it is the way it is, but that's the major thing. Two major things, I think, is the media, the marketing, and sort of the grassroots football in high schools being taught how to play an NFL game.
One of the main criticisms, that's come out with this XFL is, we did the CFL expansion back in the 90s, that didn't work. That was a failure, right? When you hear that, obviously having lived through all that, do you equate the two? Do we agree that time is non-linear, things change in the world and things progress, or what do you think about that argument?
Sorry, you just froze there for a second.
That's okay.
I didn't hear it.
The whole debate where the American expansion didn't work before, so it's not going to work now.
Oh, that's a hard one. Excuse me. That's a tough one because I think when we did it the first time, I don't think it was done as efficiently and effectively as it could have been done. But there again, you still have the whole the dynamics and this salary cap as well. There's the exchange rate. Is it fair? How are you going? Because all the contracts. I was a part of the Players Association for a long time. So if you think about this, all of the contracts belong to the league. Okay, so if we're going to have a $5.2 million, and people will laugh, $5.2 million salary cap for the players, how's that going to translate down into, are we going to drop that 30 points for the exchange rate and then try and get a bunch of American players to play for that? How are we going to keep it equal playing field across the board? Are we're going to get we're going to probably not pull enough players. We're just going to get guys out of college that weren't drafted and everything else didn't make it up here, but then can make it down there. Like there's so many variables to think about. And then, are we going to allow a U.S. owner down there that's got huge deep pockets to be able to run the team down there the way he wants, and then we're handcuffed up here following the rules? The player ratio. How are those to me are major challenges, and just to help the league with dollars is how it was done back then. These teams had to put in a lot of money to come in, which helped the league as a whole. But I think that was short-sighted, obviously. So Baltimore, they had a really strong following. I've actually met fans in Grey Cups that still follow the CFL from way back when. And I think the whole thing that stopped that was the Baltimore's getting taken over by the NFL. But there again, so it's just didn't work out for various reasons. I don't know if it can happen again. I honestly don't know if those hurdles are too big to overcome to make it work.
Do you think if everything were to go great, that would be worth that work, that those hurdles, if we could do some sort of joint cross-border league?
Yeah, absolutely. If we can get by those types of things to make it work, if it can work, I would welcome it. Why wouldn't I? The American market is so big. If it could work and we could be bringing in television dollar revenues from the United States, why not? I think look at the NFL. I don't even know what is a NFL team getting TV revenue. Do you know?
I don't, not off the top of my head.
But all right, like what is a salary cap for an NFL team?
It's like one was it 180? They dropped it this year, 192 or 182.
182 million.
Yeah.
Per team?
Yeah.
Per team. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they dropped it down this year.
Yeah, I mean, even if
182.5. Yeah, I knew I was close.
Yeah, I mean, you think about that. I mean, even if it was we were getting 20 million, you know what I mean? I think the TV. I can't recall right now. I forget what the TV revenue up here for the league is, but I don't know. It's I don't know, 80 million for the whole league, something. I mean, I'm guessing, right? But so I think when you look at numbers, TV revenue, if it's done right, I honestly think there's enough interest in football in North America to be able to have another league other than the NFL. I don't think there's enough for the XFL, the other league they're bringing in, and the NFL. I mean, it's just it'll be diluted, right? It's too much. So, but I do think there is enough football loving people that can do this, because I think it's Labor Day, halfway through the CFL season, is the start of the NFL season. So it's just giving the football fans an extra 9 weeks of football, and then then they can do what they want, whether they're going to watch one or both leagues, because it's a different game. And I think that's the one thing that people have to do is it's not a better game or a worse game. It's a different game, and when people understand the strategy behind it, when, you miss a field goal, the goalposts are at the, at the front of the goal line, you got a 20-yard end zone. Okay. Now it comes down to strategy. Are you going to bring it out? Are you going to give up a point? It's a different game. So, I always hear people that love the NFL. I've played NFL. I've played in the XFL with NFL rules. I played in NFL Europe, and I can remember I actually played one game in NFL Europe where I never punted the ball once. So there's no change of possession. There was no opportunity for a punt return, which to me, those could be very exciting. So I think the CFL game, it's a different game. I like it. I think it's a lot more creative, and I think there's enough room for it.
Yeah, when we talk about TV rights, the NFL, what they're signed on, I think it goes into effect next year. The per game that the NFL gets is the entire CFL TV rights for the season, which is crazy.
Comical.
Yeah. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you've been so gracious. Before we go, just, I've heard this a lot with all this XFL, CFL stuff right now. It's gotten a lot more attention on the CFL, right? A lot more people talking about the CFL for the last 3 months than maybe would have otherwise. That's good, right? I mean, thoughts just on the extra eyeballs, whether it's bickering or fighting or whatever is happening online about all this?
Yeah, you know what? I was told a long time ago, any type of publicity, good, bad, or indifferent, is good because it's publicity, right? You're bringing attention to the league. So I think that whether people are talking, negatively that it's not going to work or that it is going to work, and just debating about the whole possibility is, I think, good for the league. And it's bringing awareness to the league. I'll never forget, I went down to training camp with NFL Europe in Atlanta, and had a roommate never even heard of the CFL. Never even heard of it. So I think it's a good thing.
that would be. Any other random thoughts before we let you go? Just anything that you had on your mind coming into this I didn't ask you about?
No, not really. I mean, it's good to see that, we've got, but like you said, you've got the knowledge and everything else of the CFL now, what's going on, and you're talking about it. So, I'm glad to see that we're getting a little bit more awareness and publicity in the States. It's good to see that way.
Perfect. Yeah, we're doing our best. I so appreciate this. Like I said, I just, I was talking with Rob, couldn't think of a better person in the world. I mean, such a fascinating life. I couldn't imagine it. I want to thank you so much for sharing your time today, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. And I think maybe it might be a good idea. The people that are thinking about doing this, maybe they should bring in somebody to discuss this from a player's perspective and see, because everyone that's talking about this always talks about it from like a, management level and everything else, but from a player's level, what's it going to take to get players to go there, and what are their thoughts? What are they thinking? So maybe they need to do something like that as well.
I'll tell you, these NDAs are a blessing and a curse, because it does feel like it's this tight walled room, and, fans, players, everybody wants to, know what's going on. And it's hard. I mean, it's frustrating, but especially from the players. I mean, we advocate on here, and that's why we cover a lot of the smaller leagues that we do, right, is to give the platform for these guys. And and even right now with the CFL season, leaving players kind of in the dark right now. I mean, we're hearing, I think this morning, that June 14th, right, is kind of when the drop dead date to let everybody know. But, I mean, any thoughts on that before you go? Just current CFL timing stuff? Yeah,
I've heard that it's a go. And so players are going to know it's a go, but when? It's unfortunate. I think their hands are tied, because you're dealing with each and individual province when it comes to a government. So, they're doing the best they can, but their hands are tied. Some governments, provinces are closing down. They're getting worse. Some are getting better. But obviously you need to have everybody all on the same page. The vaccines that's all going to have to happen. Last year I was going to do some consulting with special teams and kicking. And, now all of a sudden the league stepped in and has changed the amount of coaches you can have and some rules. And there's lots of things going on behind the scene. It's unfortunate, but the players are the ones that are just going to be, they're players. And unfortunately, nobody cares about the players till the last minute. So it's some people won't like to hear me say that, but the truth of the matter is, it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So,
it's we need to, I definitely agree, expand that conversation and get everybody involved.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for your time. Busy Saturday. I'll let you go, but from all of us here, we really appreciate it. And I mean, you're like an XFL legend. I mean, I know you've spent most of your life and career in the CFL, but you're an XFL legend to a lot of people. So thank you so much.
All right. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. And let me know if you ever need me again.
Perfect.
Welcome back, everybody. Want to thank Pat and Paul for their time joining Reed solo chats, but we're just trying to maximize the time we have. Well, Reed has, and just get some of these interviews out of the way, and that's why Reed takes these on solo sometimes. So, want to thank them for stopping by and chatting. Moving on.
No, that's really what we're trying to do. Is like our goal is to bring you the best stuff possible. And so if that's Paul there or me there, both of us, that's all I care about, is bringing the best content. And so if Pat can record, then Paul has to work, and we just roll with it. And so, our goal is to bring you the best content we possibly can.
Definitely. So let's move on to the XFL stuff, and let's talk about something that might make Mr. Ehrhart a little angry. Look at this. Redbird Capital has hired someone that knows football.
But
Kevin LaForce.
But just because you don't know, like I'm a wedding videographer, but I could hire somebody to do like graphic design work for me. Like that is a thing like that people do.
That happens. That happens, Ehrhart. Sorry to burst your bubble. But NFL executive Kevin LaForce, he's the architect of the league's media and investment strategies. Keyword media. He's leaving the NFL to join the sports-focused Redbird Capital. Again, Redbird Capital all over the place. Very cool.
Yeah, Mr. LaForce, I like that name because I feel like he is going to be the force moving on here. But he helped negotiate the $110 billion NFL deal. So like, hello, I mean, this is like crazy time, and we were going to get into all the other XFL stuff with the weeks and months and all that, but like, this is a big time hire. There's no, like, you can't BS around this at all. Like, this is a big name coming in. Like, this is, drop your whatever on the floor and show what's up.
And this is what we tried to get through to Mr. Ehrhart, that they were going to hire people that knew how to do this, and they're hiring people that know how to do this. So whenever you want to come back on and apologize, it's great.
I get emails every time we talk about Raj. I get emails that say I go, people still forget that plan. Anyway, but so that's great. So he's going to be on. Okay. So so very exciting. So that's all good. So this is my life this week, and I've lost like followers. I don't care. I am so mad about this. I'm so angry about this. It is June 10th right now, because I said it was June last week or whatever, 2 weeks ago, and it wasn't. And Ken, our wonderful listener, is like, it's not June yet. Okay, it's May like 31st. It is June 10th today as we record, June 11th as you listen to this. If you think the XFL is playing in 2022, I cannot help you. And I used to think about this. Remember when Rod was on our show and people would write in and be like, Rod doesn't know what he's talking about. And then Rod would go, well, yes, I do. They go, well, show the text, show the emails. And Rod's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, I don't need to show. Like, that's how I feel right now, is all these people. I just was in the thing and they're like, well, if you can't show me in writing, then I'm not going to believe you. Then don't believe me. Right. All the articles that everybody shares from XFL News Hub, I talk to all those people every day on the chat, every day, all the time. Like, do you not think that we know everything that they know that's going on? And it kills me. And like, I get on there, I'm like, Paul and I spend 40 hours a week on this stupid show. Like, I'm not just some random speculator, like, oh, the XFL is playing it. Well, but like, it kills me. I'm like, I'm not just some random guy posting about, then don't believe me. Then don't believe me. The XFL is playing in 2023. Don't believe me then. That's fine.
That's been happening. I mean, that happens when you're in the field of journalism, Reed. Like, people are just always going to question your sources now. They don't just, think you have these things and think you know these things. They're just going to question them anyway. I mean, the whole thing that when the Pac-12 when the Pac-10 was going to the Pac-12, like, I had sources telling me, so on and so forth. Like, this is what was going to happen, and sure enough, it almost did happen, but it didn't happen because Texas A&M didn't want to join the Pac, wanted to join the SEC. But I mean, that's just something you have to deal with. Is like, people are always going to question your sources, man. It's ridiculous. We're not just like some random people on there. Like, I get all this. And that's why we try to do this show and tell you what's right. Zach messages me, is this legit? Is this not? Like, that's what we're trying to do. And so, that's fine. Go whatever. I'll just bookmark all this stuff and come back to me. But like, I can tell you what that is what is happening. This all spawned. Dany did an interview with E! Magazine, and this was like over email anyway. So that was like the stupidest thing about this. And they were asking her about the XFL. And she goes, I want to make sure yes. So they're talking about things. She goes, while it is no small task and we are months from hitting the field, it is humbling that the following, my passion, has, received such a positive impact in other people's lives. So I just read that. I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, Dany was in E! I was just going to bookmark the thing to talk about it. And then they're like, oh, the XFL is months from hitting the field. Yeah, months.
Next year.
2023.
Nobody would say anything that's happening in 2023 is years away.
Is it really years away though?
It's not. Well, it's about 20 months. That's not years.
No, it's not years. That's what we're getting at. Is like, when you're talking about less than 24 months, you're talking about months, not years. That's what I kept telling people. Like, it's months away. So saying a football league is going to take the field in February 2024, 2023 is months away. But months away. It's not years away.
Yeah, but even just to say that sentence out loud, while it is no small task and we are months from hitting the field, like, we're still months away. Here's the deal, though. Don't believe me. Mike Mitchell asked them. They go, yeah, that was a misstep. So there you go. Like, don't believe me then.
It's not even a misstep in a sense that, like, people aren't understanding, like, what months away could mean. It could mean 18 months.
Yeah.
That's still months away.
But like I said, don't trust me. Trust the people I talk to. Mike Mitchell, they said, like, he went to them. This is from XFL. So that's fine. Argue with me. Go argue with me. Like, I don't, that you're hanging your hat that the XFL, like, I'm sorry. Like, watch USFL, watch FCF, watch CFL, watch the Spring League. I'm sorry. The XFL is not playing until 2023. I feel like I'm arguing with the wall. They're doing something bigger. They're going to do a lot of stuff next year. We're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about, hires and camps and shows and stuff. But like, I mean, again, don't believe me then. So then last night, Dany tweeted there on Instagram, and this was actually good because the whole NDA thing was annoying because that was like, okay, this is just like, you know, a dick tease or whatever. But it was her like with her nails, and then they got the screen. And so she's sharing her screen with Jay Rothman, who he was the former Monday Night Football producer. So that now has been confirmed from Mike, from the XFL. So again, don't believe me. From the XFL, they have confirmed it's a public story now. Jay Rothman is going to be involved in a consulting role. Could be more as an advising consulting role, but that could be brought in more. That's from Mike. That's public. That's published story. But the other interesting thing about this is on the thing, it says Newco content plan and deliverables. And generally, you use the word like Newco as a placeholder if you are creating a new brand corporation name. Because Mike's big thing is it's not a merger now. It's going to be a shared partnership under an umbrella like kind of thing, which I don't know what that looks like. And Mike's going to, I guess, have a big story next week about what that looks like. Thoughts on any of that stuff, Paul?
Is the Newco something that like is going to be the company that delivers content, or is it just I have questions about that too. Like I guess I'm not even on that XFL News Hub chat. I should probably get on there.
It's a lot. It's very overwhelming.
I feel like that's the case. I don't know if the Newco doesn't stand for like rebranding the XFL. It's just maybe how content gets delivered, or maybe how television production is done for the XFL. I got some questions about that.
Yeah. So that's the big
NDAs.
Yes. So that's the big thing. I mean, but you know, that's the thing. Like they're working on stuff. This is what we talk. And I want to get all your USFL stuff in that section. But this is what I said when people said, why can the USFL launch next in 2022 and the XFL can't? It's because the XFL is doing cross-brand promotion, all these. They want to do a lot of bigger stuff. And I'm not saying that.
Right. They're doing it right.
Well, and I don't know if it is right. I said last night in the XFL chat, I said, to dumb it down, it's like Brian Woods and them, it feels like cavemen. And then this is like the Matrix. And I don't know like which one is better, but right, like Brian and them are just putting football on the field. And that's great. It's going to be football. It's going to be 12 weeks or 10 weeks, whatever. This is like cross-brand cultural awareness, you know, bringing ESPN docs and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know what people want. This is what they think. I don't know if the juice will be worth the squeeze on this 1.5 delay.
I think whatever they can do to give the XFL a long, what is it? I have my drone
lifespan.
No, not lifespan. I'm thinking like runway. I have my drone license. I forgot what the runway. Basically, to give the plane a lot of speed to take off and continue flying. I think that's part of it. Like, I have my thoughts, and we'll get to that in a bit about the USFL stuff. So,
my poll just came in, the one I tweeted yesterday. Totally not related to anything. My wife and I, this just ended. My wife and I are going to Hawaii, February 2023. When is our trip taking place? Months away, years away. Years away got 70% of the votes of 90 votes.
You come on, people. It's months away. It's not years. It's not more than 2 years. Years is plural. Just because a calendar date switches to 2023, it doesn't mean it's years. It's still months.
Yeah, look at it on a line. Look at it on a line and not on like flipping pages. Anyway, so that's going to be the big thing. But anyway, I think it's, it's feeling less mergery and more this Umbrella Corp kind of like, wasn't that like Resident Evil, like the Umbrella Corps? Like, isn't that like... Yeah. Anyway, so that is that. But anyway, very exciting. Kevin LaFleur, very exciting. Jeremy Rothman, or Jay Rothman, sorry, not Jeremy. Jay Rothman coming on. So we got some heavy hitters. It's big stuff, but it is 2023. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry to get so angry about that and upset people, But I am tired of seeing other websites, other XFL news websites have actually blocked us, but not because of this. And they're like running these stories like Dany is putting the Instagram thing up to fight back about the USFL. And it's like, that's not a thing. Like,
Not accurate.
I don't participate in clickbait at all. Just a couple things. The Washington football team, you saw all those first day. I'm going to keep this like, I want to put up the one with Ryan Fitzpatrick, all the Washington football players for the first day of training camp. That I believe is Ryan Disdier, and he is now the Washington football team social media manager, and he was with the DC Defenders in the XFL.
Very cool.
So
I think it's a very clever campaign that they're doing. Of course, Fitzmagic. How many schools has Fitzmagic been to? Like 13? Yeah. And by schools, I mean NFL teams.
Does he have more teams or children?
Wow, I don't know. I'm not writing an A&E biography on him. I don't know.
So I reached out to this JP Finley. He works for NBC. He covers the Washington football team. I want to get some on the grounds with this Washington football training camps because he says this was his tweet. Heineke, because obviously, right, Fitzpatrick and Heineke are competing right now. Heineke with a beautiful ball down the sideline to Harmon. Best play of the day. Kite coverage too. Heineke getting good reports from training camps.
It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I think that's the thing. I think, Mr. Fitzmagic has a very short leash. He's known as a journeyman. So I think it's a very, it's going to be interesting to see how much of a leash. I think Fitzmagic starts the season, but if he doesn't play well by game 2, I think maybe Heineke comes in and we'll see what he can do.
Yeah, I reached out to JP. I want eyes on the, we got Sheena Quick. We had her with the Panthers. I want eyes on the ground with Washington football the whole way through. I want to get our inside source. That's
a good idea. All right, we're going to take another break right now. Come back. We've got all of our guests coming up dealing with USFL. We got Steve. We got Michael. Oh, yeah, the copyright attorney. And then Kyle with the USFL project, all coming up right after this. Steve Ehrhart, the executive director of the Liberty Bowl and former executive in the USFL. How you doing, Steve?
I'm glad to be here with you. And it's certainly been a lot of news this week. And the reason I'm involved is I was elected to be the last chairman of the executive committee of the USFL after the infamous lawsuit. And I was unfortunately tapped to be in charge of splitting up the proceeds from the lawsuit. People forget that we did win the $3.76 check, which I still have. I never cashed that, but they did pay us nearly $6 million in attorney's fees. So I distributed that. And then so I've sort of been the guy elected to maintain the legacy and the rich history of the USFL over the years. And we've done that. We've had reunions. We've had events. We've kept a bank account all these years. We have some licensed merchandise that's sold through a number of sites. When people talk about they go to a site, most of those are the retails that our official wholesaler sells. And, we get those reports on a quarterly basis. So we're still around. We certainly haven't been playing ball, but, after this announcement that came out, surprised everybody that had been involved in the original USFL. I must have received 8 or 10 calls immediately. People that had been executives and part owners of the teams back in the 80s and who are still very active and respected guys. So a guy like Carl Peterson, who had been the president, part owner of the Philadelphia/Baltimore Stars, who went on to, bring the Kansas City Chiefs as their president. He'll be eventually a Hall of Fame guy. And, Carl has been very tuned into the USFL. In fact, he donated the USFL trophy to the Canton Hall of Fame. And there's been a great, display up there at Canton of the USFL. So the group of us have been dedicated to preserving the rich legacy. And by that, I mean that the respect of the USFL name and what we achieved. And certainly as you guys are the experts. You followed an awful lot of guys that have tried to put together a spring league, including the NFL, including the XFL, including the AAF, all these different entities that tried to, step into that same spot. And we've just been concerned that we want to protect and I keep saying the legacy, but the blood, sweat, tears, and fortunes that we poured into that good name of the USFL.
Yeah, it's interesting. We and we were talking before we recorded. We go back with the Spring League, and a lot of our listeners, Jake Henry, Max, a lot of these guys, we're following a lot of these trademarks back. End of the year, January, kind of acquiring these things. And so, there was always kind of a rumble. Okay, this is happening. What's Brian working on? CEO Brian Woods has been on the show before. But, certainly the announcement last week kind of took everybody by surprise, kind of in the middle of the Spring League season, all this stuff with XFL, CFL going on. Obviously, you were shocked as well. Kind of initial reactions. I know that we had the paper, the interview came out that, it's kind of stunned words. What were your thoughts last week when you saw this?
Well, I think you hit it right. Stunned, shocked, and within 24 hours, I had calls from at least 6 or 7 of the, and I say former executives / owners of the USFL teams from around the country. I already mentioned in Carl's one, we corresponded, and Carl's certainly been one that the Philadelphia Baltimore Stars, they've had reunions from year to year, not every single year, but they've stayed together. And, we talked about, the merchandise that we've been selling. So we weren't hiding from anybody. There's been several books and, we're in plain sight, and that's why it shocked us. And I'd never met Mr. Woods, never heard from him, never talked to him, and neither have all these other guys. That's why it was so stunning, because if the guy's trying to use the value, and it's not just having your lawyers send in a notice to the trademark company, or not the company, but the government office, and say, okay, we're registered here. And when they said he had acquired the rights, he didn't acquire them from any of the original people, whether the lawyers say, well, they haven't been using it enough, but that's not true. We've been using it. But our goal, and I'm here on your show today to say that our goal is not to get into an antagonistic situation. It's not to get into a legalistic issue. What we just want to do is make sure that if there is going to be a resurgence of the good name of the USFL, we want to make doggone sure that it's done right. And you guys have seen for 30 some years, there's a lot of people on the trash heap and good respected people that tried to do a spring league, and it takes hundreds of millions of dollars. And, you look back at the AAF, or I guess that was the AAL, and Major League Football and all these other people, and they were mostly underfunded. And that's what we want to make sure of, that if somebody is going to get together with us and want to use those names, that let's make doggone sure that there's enough value in the terms of money in the bank. That's bottom line, not somebody trying to encourage investors to come along or make an announcement. Well, I'm going to do this and we're going to seek investors, but there's hundreds of millions of dollars to guarantee to the fans, to the sponsors, and to the public that it'll be there in 3 years, because how many of these other leagues had grand hopes? I look at the American with AAF. Is that the one Charlie Ebersol was doing? He had some credibility. He had a TV contract, but didn't have any money. And those of us in the know knew that. But a lot of people got left hanging out, and the bankruptcy hurt a lot of people. And that's what we do not want to have happen to the USFL name.
I guess my question is then, I'm trying to ask this without being antagonistic. Can he just say that he owns these trademarks, or I'm confused. I really am.
Well, Paul, you asked the perfect question, and trademark, and it's more than just the trademark. I guess, and I'm not trying to be an expert in it, but I guess if you register a trademark or a logo or something like that, and you say that, well, it hasn't been in use for X number of years, then the trademark office, then they'll say, does anybody have objections? Or do we write in and say, wait a minute, it has been in use, and then you go through that long process. So I think that's where it is now. There's been when they use the words, as I was telling Reed, you use the words acquire. I don't know that anybody's ever acquired anything. They may have sent in a request to, register, and then I guess it's the Copyright and Trademark Office and sends you a notice, and then they start a hearing process. So you're exactly right, Paul. That's a question. That's why I say we're not trying to get into this to say, okay, you can't use it. What we do want to do is have a voice and make sure that if anybody, whether it's Mr. Woods or anybody else, does it in a way that's respectful and will be successful. And that's the whole key, because you guys, again, you're the experts. You followed all this. Look look at the difficulties that XFL has had. What? Almost 3 different iterations. And I worked with Vince McMahon and Dick Ebersol in the first XFL, and we thought it was going to be great. But then after losing $70 million, people get a little nervous and they start getting ready to pull the plug. And then in Charlie Ebersol's situation with the AA, they never had the money from the beginning. He was scrambling the entire time to try and raise the money. And so that's unfortunate for everyone, and that doesn't do anybody any good. So I don't wish ill will on anybody. In fact, I admire anybody that's trying to be entrepreneurial and start something, but we just want to make sure. And so it's more than just legalistic or, antagonistic. It's saying, and we've never heard from none of these folks that were involved in the original USFL, a guy like Jed Simmons. Some of you may know Jed. Chet Simmons was the original commissioner league. Jed, his son, went on to greatness. He was president, I believe, of the Sundance Network and an experienced TV guy. And, he was shocked by it too and wondering, well, his dad, put his name on that first USFL success level. And so that's what you need. You need to have the public buy-in and you need to have respect. And it's a hard enough to go up against the NFL, no matter what anybody says, whether you're playing the spring or the fall. And we, of course, went back and forth with Donald Trump about this for many a time against an entrenched, Goliath like the NFL, which is so powerful. Even the NFL started their own, World League of American Football. And then they were thinking about using it. Bill Polian, remember, he worked with trying to make it a feeder league, a developmental league. So it's a huge undertaking, takes hundreds of millions of dollars. And even then, you're on the precipice. Do you make it or you not make it? So that's why, Paul, your question is a perfect question. And, that's what we're trying to dig into now and find out really what Fox is thinking, what Brian Woods, does he have, what kind of money backing is there? And so you're asking the right questions and I'm asking the same questions myself.
To follow up on that, were you familiar with what he did? Not this last iteration of the Spring League, but the one before.
Not really at all. I've heard of it, and I've just heard the pay for play and read some of those stories. I've never met or talked to the man, so I really can't comment too much about it. So I don't really know much about it other than the little clips of pay for play that some of the players have to pay in, and that's something that I would want to find out a lot more about.
What do you think the idea of, we're June 9th today that we're recording, this will air on Friday, to launch this league or, relaunch, but to take the field in 2022, what do you, 6 months, 8 months, right? If we're doing it late spring, I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, I've been through 3 of those. When we started the USFL, we were way down the road in the summer of '82 for a launch there in the spring of '83, and we were going full speed. And by the summertime, and that's one reason why Carl Peterson built in the Philadelphia Stars, that championship team he had with Kelvin Bryant and so on. He was already working well down the road in the summer of '82 to be ready. And so even now, it would be a race once you had teams and cities and stadium leases and all the kinds of things you would have to be ready in 22, even with unlimited money. And so I don't see how it can work. And look, and you guys have been following the quote, 3rd iteration of the XFL, trying to, talk to whether they're going to talk with the CFL. I'm not sure the CFL is that interested in. Again, that's third hand to me, but, are they going to get off here again in this year? And I think there's no question in my mind, because I was familiar with the AAF with Charlie Ebersol's deal. Bill Polian worked hard getting players and that kind of thing for them. But, were they ready? No, they didn't have the financing in place. So I'm not sure that here we are and trying to, less than a year to launch something that, just trying to get leases in stadiums, is enormous, and oftentimes a political situation in each city, So, yeah, it would be very, very tight, even if you had everything all buttoned up with money in place.
We've dealt a lot with the XFL, obviously with, the tainted past, just a lot of baggage. Do you think Brian Woods and company would have been better off just we're expanding the spring league, we're going to add a couple more teams, then, to go into the past, deal with all the, right? I mean, they're dealing with this now, right? I mean, this is whether it's not like opposition, but I mean, there is like a a lot of questions now about trademarks, about the past, what happened before, digging up a lot of that stuff versus like, we're just starting the spring league again. I mean, what do you think about doing it without going this route?
Yeah. Well, I honestly just don't know that much about what he's done in the past. As mentioned, I've never met or talked to the man. I've never been to a spring league game. I did watch a couple things on FS1, but not knowing much about that. I can't comment about that. But what I'm interested in is, and I guess I feel an obligation to all those people that say the blood, sweat, the tears, the fortune, and believe me, when people talk about the USFL, I remember Reggie White, who played for us here with the Memphis Showboats, when he was inducted in the Hall of Fame, he talked about, and he was a Super Bowl champion, in the NFL. He said, one of the greatest experiences in my life was playing with the Memphis Showboats in the USFL. And where I'm obviously prideful of what happened, not only in the entire league, but here in Memphis. People forget that we had 17 players from the 1985 Memphis Showboats that went straight into the NFL the next year. And of course, Reggie maybe was the best player in the whole league. I remember telling the Philadelphia Eagles owner when they came down trying to, pry him away from the Showboats to Norman Brayman. I said, Mr. Brayman, he said, well, maybe he can make our team. I said, Mr. Brayman, he's not only better than anybody you got on the Philadelphia Eagles, he may be better than anybody in the whole damn NFL. And of course, they didn't believe any of that. But, that's the kind of the pride and, trying to protect that, image. And again, when we get down to the final checkpoints in our lives, we did something that people were prideful of, and we don't want that name to be carried down the tube of something blowing up, using the name and the image. And there is your question's a good question. Again, I can't comment about what he's done with the spring league, but by all of a sudden it was so shocking that, okay, well, he's flashing up the USFL logo and that kind of thing and saying that he's acquired it. But, those are the questions that we had. And so, again, I'm just as stunned as you are, and I'm asking the same questions that you and Paul are asking.
Does someone actually own the copyrights and the trademarks and the franchise names and all that stuff?
Yeah, Paul, I'm not going to try and be a lawyer on this. I can tell you these are facts, though. The facts are that we've had a bank account all these years. Facts are that we've been licensing merchandise. I could read you the last quarter's report of how many Birmingham Stallions jerseys were sold and how many USFL 1983 champions were sold. And, there's some value in what we earned and paid for back then and has still kept that name pristine for all these years because, and now you guys aren't old enough, I don't think, to remember to have been at the games, but now I
was born in 78. So
okay. Well, you at 4 years old, I hope you had a chance to watch these games, but the fact that you two guys, it's been passed down to you and there's some respect for what was done in that league. And whenever people talk about the players, the coaches that have been in the league, they always talk about, what a great experience they had in the league and how respect it was. The big display up there at the Canton Hall of Fame there at the USFL. I mean, the latest I've been offered, I better not say, but I think the latest I've been offered for the $3.76 check is $50,000. So there's some value in these items that history, and we've preserved that by having and the people who have talked about it. I mean, players almost every week somebody talks about their experience when they played for the Generals or they played for the Stallions. They played. In fact, on last week's report from the sale of merchandise, the most sold were the San Antonio Gunslingers of all things. So somebody down there must have been having a San Antonio Gunslingers party. So when your question is strictly about did you send in a registration and the people at the government office say, okay, you've got it. And then it's more so that like the guy at Birmingham, the president of the Birmingham Stallions, called me and said, well, if they try and come in here and don't connect with those of us who were here and we're still in town and say, okay, we're going to use your name and not have a good coordination, I guess I would say and I've never met him and talked to him, but if he's listening to your show, I'd say, you should envelop and embrace the goodwill, not just try and go around it, I guess, because it's a hard enough battle anyway, and kind of create the situation of uncertainty. And that's what a new entity needs, is the certainty to tell the fans, if you come out and buy season tickets or you get a sponsor, hey, will you sign a 2-year contract? Well, no, I'm not going to sign a 2-year contract sponsoring you, and I don't even know if you're going to be around. And they've been burnt the last couple times by spring leagues that went bankrupt. So those are the issues, and I guess so. It's more than just saying, okay, did you file for? I can't answer that question directly. Of what are the legal? We certainly haven't been playing football the last 20, 30 years, but nobody. We've never sold it to anybody, or there's a lot of historical things about. You look back, especially in the sports world, about nostalgia and old trading cards. I mean, I wish I'd have kept the original trading cards from the very first year of the USFL with the Herschel Walker cards and then the Jim Kelly and the Steve Young cards. They're worth a ton now. I used to have boxes in my car, but I can't remember what happened to them. But there is value in that historical precedent.
Well, and what I think, and what I get from this more than anything is, like I have a business, right? I've worked very hard to establish the brand that I have, not on this podcast, right? In Seattle. And, the idea of someone coming in and tarnishing that, like I said, you got the AAF, all these, the spring football leagues, all these into where you've, feel like you try to keep the USFL kind of away from that. But yeah, I could see that fear of someone, them bringing that in now. And if it had just been the Brian Wood Spring League that failed here in another year, we add it to the pile. But where it's the USFL now, then it's always going to be associated, right? That name with that. I mean, I get that fear. I definitely understand. Like you guys have tried to preserve this for so many years and then have it now. Like, it's not even your thing, right? Where it's like, hey, we're going to take this on and we're diving in the pool. And you're like, well, wait a minute. We don't, it is, I get that it's very frustrating.
Oh, no, and you hit it right on the head. Reed, you and Paul are asking the right questions, and that's what we're doing. And I would certainly hope that, we wish the best for any entrepreneur that started. Again, we've tilted against the windmills ourselves, and so we admire that. But it's something we want to make sure and protect that legacy. I keep saying that, but that's the key there. The good name that people paid so many dues for, worked so hard to do that, and if we would be convinced that there's a way for it to succeed and be properly financed and that kind of thing, we'd certainly be open to that. So that's where I'm kind of, as Paul, as you said, I'm kind of in the middle here of saying, we're digging into it and trying to kind of understand. And I guess that's why it was so shocking. I would have hoped or thought, because over the years, I've had very many groups, and you guys can probably count them. I mean, there are different names. There's probably at least 8 or 10 different groups that have tried for Spring League. Most of them got to my door and we talked about it. And I remember telling a couple of different groups that said, I'm not going to help you or step into it until I see $100 million in the bank in a trust fund that is guaranteed, that can't be taken out of there, to give the assurance and the guarantee to the people you're asking, whether it's players, coaches, fans, and too often times, even in the AAF, I mean, guys like 2 of our former players, coaches, Steve Spurrier, Rick Neuheisel, some of those guys that were former USFL guys, and said, well, so I'll give it a try for 3 months. So what if it goes belly up? That kind of thing. They didn't. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not trying to quote them directly, but we don't want that to have a situation where it's just kind of a flyer. And as you guys know, you reported on it. It's a tough deal to take on. In the NFL and college football, and then you've got to spend some money. You got to get some name players. You just can't be. Somebody told me in the networks today that minor league anything is very tough to get a national audience. Minor league baseball's got its niche, but they're not trying to be a national television product. Minor league anything, the public doesn't seem to want to buy. I mean, Kentucky Derby works great. People love to see it, but that next race at somebody else, it might be just pretty good horses in that race, but nobody cares about that on a national basis.
We have Michael Cohen. He's an intellectual property lawyer and copyright attorney coming up later on in the show to kind of give his legal opinion about everything going on. So we'll dive into that with him. What kind of questions do you think you have about maybe the next 6 months of this process? What kind of things do you see on the horizon?
I guess, what's the financing? What's the projected, and there's been this debate over many years about these new leagues. Is it single entity, like the XFL was? Is it franchised? Is it an NFL, NBA model where the individual owners own their own teams and then they have the impetus and the competitive juice to put the best product on the can, or whether do you just have an entity where, you know, they're employees and the players are all paid by a central office. So that the kind of the structure is very important, and that begets the issue of what's the financing like? How many dollars do you need? And everybody in the last 30, 40 years, even us in the USFL back in the 80s, you know, that was one of the big issues. You know, did we have enough financing to last through? We did superbly the first year, and you know, but then the second year there was a few of the owners that lost more money than they thought, and we had to shore that up. So I'm certainly aware of that, and so those kind of things are what we'd be trying to look for. And I think if you can develop a league, and you know, again, Bill Pulling I have enormous respect for, and he's a Hall of Fame executive, you know, from the NFL, and he put his heart and soul into the alliance, you know, getting players, but he didn't know that they didn't have enough money to keep going. And so, you know, there's always a good pool of players and coaches. That 5,000 players come out of the colleges every year. I think it's something close to that. And certainly not all of them are able to play professional football, but they all want to. Mm-hmm. And together, that's what, you know, they're talking about in this pay for play league, the spring league that Mr. Woods has been doing. And so there's always plenty of players, but can you get a product that, you know, a national audience is going to look for?
That's a very good question. Steve Ehrhart, we thank you for your time and all your insight on everything USFL related, and there's all this trademark copyright stuff that's going around.
Well, I appreciate it. It's awfully, you know, reminiscent. I got Reggie White's jersey on my wall. I got a life-size poster of Reggie, our team on the showboats out on the river, posed in the Mississippi River on the Memphis showboat. And I say I hope I'm getting across. That's why there's so much, you know, pride and value and people that we want to do it right. And, you know, we're hoping to, but I would be interested in what your legal expert talks about that. And again, factually, you know, we haven't been playing, but we have been maintaining. We're in existence. We got a bank account. We've got, you know, we've been selling jerseys and paraphernalia with our marks for years. And does that qualify as, you know, so I would hope that somebody just what you were saying, Paul, about what you built up there, you know, is somebody could just come in one day and say, okay, you weren't at work, you weren't broadcasting for a while, but now we're going to use your name. So let me know what he says, you know, and again, because we haven't been in that boat of trying to go. We know there's been a lot of bootleggers out there that have been, you know, selling merchandise, you know, but we haven't tried to hire lawyers to go out and, you know, cease and desist and all that kind of stuff. You know, we haven't been about that. It's been more this overall protect the great legacy of the names and the effort that so many people put in.
Very true. Thank you for your time. We will we'll have this on our show, and then, you know, I think we're going to put Michael Cohen right after you to kind of answer all these questions. So
tell him to give me a call. I'd like his opinion. Maybe we'll have to put him to work here. But, so, you know, this is not a thing. This is an actual mural of the full stadium here at the Liberty Bowl in Memphis, Tennessee. About a 10-foot mural on my wall behind me. So appreciate that. We work with the AutoZone Liberty Bowl, the college football game now here in Memphis. So I appreciate being on with you guys. Good luck.
I can't thank you enough for your time today and getting back and setting this up. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Michael Cohen, a intellectual property and copyright lawyer, joining us now to talk about this USFL thing. I wanted to reach out to a copyright lawyer to discuss this because we had some questions about these USFL trademarks that have popped up. I don't know if you read my email that I sent out late last night about the ins and outs of this whole situation. So we just kind of wanted to bring you on and get your thoughts and see what you thought about what's going on here, what your legal opinion might be on this one.
Sure. So I just want to go into this, that I don't know a whole lot about the league.
Right.
Okay. And so I did do a little bit of background on the trademark situation. So this whole thing is a trademark issue. That's what it is. And I learned a little bit about what the origins of the disputes are and what the current dispute is, at least with Steve, right? Steve Ehrhart. Mm-hmm. Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as far as I can tell, I know that you said that there was an objection by him, but I don't think there is any formal objection as of yet. So, in other words, I don't think that there's a lawsuit. I did a PACER search, which is a federal docket for lawsuits, and nothing's been filed yet. When we talk about trademarks, we're talking about the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and there's a procedure through them to contest certain trademark filings, and those are called oppositions and cancellations, and nothing has been filed there either yet. So there's no formal, as of last night at least. Maybe this morning there could be, but there's no formal type of objection. So as far as I can tell, you have to go to the ownership of all these trademarks. Okay, so the league is starting up again, right? That's what's occurring, and everyone knows this because there's been trademark filing, and the press has kind of found that out. Those are public documents, and there's actually 117 by my count that I saw total filings. Some of them are pre-existing, but most of them are new, pending. A lot of them. Okay, and these are all owned by the Spring League LLC.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
The Spring League LLC. Prior trademarks that existed, at least with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, there weren't that many.
Yeah.
There was only a few registrations. Just there was USFL, and then the term Spring League is registered as well. Those were owned previously by the United States Football League, LLC. Okay? They have since recently, as of this year, been assigned. And so, meaning that the ownership of those has transferred. So we can kind of go through that and go through who's changing hands, and maybe you guys have some comments regarding that. But that's so far the foundation of what's happening.
My question is, so I have a wedding videography company, and so I have our like business names and stuff trademarked, right? And it's under when I filed everything, like every 5 or 6 years, right? Don't you have to like you kind of got to re-up or reapply, right? And I think that's the confusing thing here is, and we talked with Mr. Ehrhart, he goes, well, we've been selling merch and stuff for 40 years and we've held all that. But I'm like, yeah, but unless you've been doing those things, right? Then that's how those trademarks go away. So like I could still sell XFL Markcast hats, but if I don't keep that trademark live, right? Doesn't that go away?
Okay. Yeah, a little bit. The trademarks technically are infinite. They can last forever. There's no term to it like a patent, and even a copyright has a term to it. However, you have to renew it, the trademark. Like Coca-Cola, the trademark for Coca-Cola has been around for 100 plus years. It doesn't die. So what happens with trademarks? You get the trademark, the registration, the federal registration, and in 5 years after the registration, you have to just do a renewal, and the renewal is a fee you pay the government and some kind of evidence that you're still using it in commerce, that you're still using that name in connection with the goods and services that you say in interstate commerce. That's the requirement. Okay, so you have to do that between the 5th and 6th year, and then thereafter at the 10-year. And then every 10 years. This is called a renewal. It's Section 8 and Section 9. So I'm not as familiar as you guys with the lineage and when it died out, but the league died at what year was it?
85.
85, something.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So then and look, I need to be a little bit careful about some of the things that I say.
Right.
I'm not giving a legal opinion as my disclaimer, and I'm just kind of giving some general conceptual things, thoughts on this. But there's abandonment is the legal term for trademarks. So whether or not the trademark is still in use, or has it been abandoned? And it's not a cut and dry, black and white term in regards to abandonment. So the courts will look at that and see, well, how many years have gone by of non-use? And what is non-use? Well, the league doesn't exist. So does that mean that the trademarks are not being used? You can make an argument that you're still using the marks in some fashion. And then it depends how was it filed? So a lot of these trademarks are the names of the team. And the goods and services could be entertainment in the nature of a football game, or merchandise, like clothing and things like that. So it's conceivable that maybe they're still selling this stuff.
They are.
And there's merchandise associated with those names. That's use in commerce. And I have no personal opinion in regards to whether or not they're using the name in connection with football. I just don't know enough about it. But if it died out in the 80s and then the team doesn't exist, that's an argument that did they abandon? So there's probably going to be some debate as to whoever has the former rights, which, Steve is claiming that he does, and that he has an existing trademark, whether it's federal or common law rights, whatever he's going to argue. He may say that we had the pre-existing rights, and who are these new guys on the block that are just applying for it all of a sudden? Okay, that's kind of what he's saying. But I think now maybe we can segue into the chain of title. Okay, so with trademarks, it's a right. Okay, kind of like a house, let's say. But it's not the real property, it's intangible property. But there's an ownership of the house, right? And that can change. You sell it, you get a deed, and you assign it over to someone else, and then you record it with the county assessor's office, and then they own it, right? So trademarks and intellectual property are kind of that way too, in which you fill out a document called an assignment, and it can change ownership. And it can go from one to another, and it's recorded with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and that's how it's validated that who has the proper ownership to it. So what I'm going to tell you guys is this public information. If I know how to access it. Not everyone knows about this yet, and I haven't seen anyone talk about this yet. So you're going to be the first. There's many trademarks. I'm just looking at the USFL trademark. Okay. Mm-hmm. So are they going to continue to use that term? Is that the term that's going to be used? Okay. So the USFL registered trademark that still is in good standing, the way it changed hands was pretty recent. The original owner was the United States Football League, LLC. And then a document called an assignment filed in February, recorded, transferring the rights from them to assignee the World Record Headquarters, Inc. You guys know who that is?
No.
Here in California. Okay. So the World Record Headquarters, Inc. then owned it. And then 2 months after that, there was another assignment in which the World Records Headquarters, Inc. then assigned it to the Spring League, LLC. And so now the Spring League, LLC is the rightful owner of at least the USFL. Okay.
Interesting.
Right. Now, I can even tell you the names if you want of who signed the documents. Maybe that might.
I'm seeing an Ed Cunningham here with the World Record Headquarters Inc. He's a former NFL player.
Yeah. Here, I have the actual document. So let's let me pull it up.
It'd be interesting to see who from the USFL LLC sold it to.
Right, because they would have had to sign off, right?
All right, are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so USFL League, the authorized signatory to that, and this was actually signed January 31st, 2021, was Jim Bailey. a person by the president. His title is president. So Jim Bailey. The assignee on that same document is Ed Cunningham of the World Record Headquarters. That's the first. We call this a chain of title. That's the first assignment of transferring him
from Jim Bailey to Ed Cunningham on January 31st. Okay.
Well, I mean, it's not to them individually.
Yeah,
in individual capacities. They're just the representatives of these entities. Okay, so they're both presidents of the respective entities. All right, and then thereafter the next one. Let me just pull that up. How do I do that? That would go to this one here. And then that goes to, hold up. Okay. And then obviously at Cunningham, so now previously it was assigned to World Records Headquarters Inc. So now World Records Headquarters Inc. is the assignor.
I can't hear him.
That's the chain of title.
I lost. Mike cut out.
Yeah, Mike cut out for a quick second. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. So, no, I'm just saying that it from there, it just went from World Records Headquarters Inc. to Spring League LLC. And the signatories are obviously Ed Cunningham and then Brian Woods on the other side.
Right.
Okay. And that's the chain of title. And that's lawful and recorded with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And then now it's up to, if someone wants to contest it, that there's a chink in the chain because maybe there shouldn't have been that transfer because maybe it was, in theory, you can make any argument you want, but you can say that maybe it wasn't authorized, that there wasn't true ownership. I've done that before where there's been a dispute in regards to the transfer from one person to another, and then somewhere there's a chink in the chain where it was unauthorized. That one person never truly had the ownership right, so therefore the rest down the line is not correct, it's invalid. I'm not saying that's the case, but that could be an argument.
Interesting. I guess the question in here is that Mr. Ehrhart has been using the USFL, the trademarks, to sell merchandise. There's a bank account that pays out, I guess, former owners of the USFL franchises,
royalties,
and royalties and stuff like that. So this Jim Bailey situation is kind of a new wrinkle that I was not aware of. That's something that we clearly have.
And look, merchandise and the use of those names in connection with a football team, they could be two different arguments.
Right.
So you may have a valid argument in regards to merchandise, but not to but obviously those go hand in hand because in a football league, the merchandise is key. That's king, so how can you not have the ownership rights? So yeah, it looks like there's something brewing and it may explode at some point.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So I know you're not giving your legal opinion, but there could be some kind of argument for Mr. Ehrhart to come in and say, look, we haven't abandoned these logos. Like, we're still using them for merchandise. There still is some leeway there to kind of, I guess, prove that there's no abandonment.
So the law of abandonment, if you had a registered trademark previously, I'm not sure if there were for the individual names. Are most of these names new names that they just made up, or they're pre-existing names?
They're pre-existing names. Yeah. These are the original names of the teams that were in the USFL.
Okay, all right. So I'm not sure if they were registered. They probably were, I assume. But if they're not being used at all for the classification, so all these trademarks are filed in connection with a particular class of goods.
Yeah.
So, for example, clothing is class 25. Okay, whereas here, let's get a little more specifics, I can tell you what the actual classes are. For example, so this class, the main ones are class 41, entertainment in the nature of football games, organization of sport events in the field of football. That's probably the big one, right?
Right.
So I don't know if there was actual registration in that class for the prior names previously, but assuming that there were, and if they went, if they went dead, then that's it. It's dead. You have to renew it. You have an obligation to renew it
and change the class if you're selling merchandise instead of
or file a new one, right. Or for the ones for merchandise, keep those going.
Makes sense. Makes total sense.
I mean, I guess what we can do is let's just go through an example. You want to give me a name of one of the teams from previously?
Let's do the Tampa Bay Bandits.
Yeah, Tampa Bay Bandits.
That would be a good one to start. This has been very open. We appreciate your time, Michael, digging into this and helping us out, like trying to get through the legal minutia of this whole entire scenario. So,
so there's like tons. There was 30. There were 30 trademarks, and a lot of them are registered. Wow. And yeah, okay. And yeah, that back in the 80s, like the earliest one I'm looking at for sunglasses, for example. So they filed in all kinds of stuff, and owned by the United States Football League. But now they're dead. So I'm looking at all the prior registrations are dead. They all died. So now there's for Tampa Bay Bandits, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 more recently pending applications that are just pending.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out this Ed Cunningham World Records connection, World Record headquarters. I mean, is that with Guinness, like World Record headquarters? I've just been trying to.
I've literally never heard of that entity, and that's just like this whole thing like raises like are we on to some like detective stuff where we're trying to like figure out where someone was the night of May 22nd and trying to figure out how things got from A to B to C, because there's a middleman here that raises some questions as well. So and of course, like we're working under the guise that Steve Ehrhart is the guy that's in control of the remainder of the USFL finances and has the bank account and has he's the last executive director of the USFL, and we're working under that assumption. So now we're wondering how Jim Bailey and Ed Cunningham come into this whole game.
Well, sometimes when you see, chain of title like this, and there's, some companies that are in between that are not familiar, sometimes you see banks who are assigning. And so I don't know anything about the World Record headquarters. I don't know what happens to the United States Football League if they filed for bankruptcy in the past or not.
I believe they did.
Okay, so it could be that the World Record headquarters has some kind of financial arrangement that maybe they were holding on to the collateral, or some financial arrangement in which they were the assignee and they're now maybe involved in the relationship with the Spring League financially.
Interesting.
So that's not uncommon.
All right. Anything else you think we need to look into there? Any other?
There is one weird filing here. So just looking at the Tampa Bay Bandits, I don't know if this has anything to do with anything, but another company is injected into this. Maybe they're just just trying to be annoying. I don't know. ABC Sports Ventures LLC also filed on January 11th, 2021 for the Tampa Bay Bandits. So, for clothing, or for both, actually for clothing and for entertainment in the nature of football games. So that's going to be a little bit of a fight, because there's also an application filed by the Spring League for for clothing, and I don't see that class. Oh no, it is here, and for class 41. So Spring League might have to have a fight with them, or maybe they just file quicker. I don't know who that is, but that's something to look out for.
It's interesting.
We'll definitely
ABC Sports Venture LLC.
Awesome.
Oh, ABT. Yep.
We'll have to put that on our docket and keep just keep looking into this, because this seems like it's not over. Like, it's not a done thing that the Spring League can relaunch the USFL from, they've got seems like they got a lot of legal red tape going on with ABT Sports Ventures and possibly Mr. Ehrhart. I don't know. Yeah.
So this is Brian Woods is on this. So I found out. So it's the Showboats and the Memphis Showboats and the Bandits, and the email address under that is one associated with Brian Woods
for the Sports Ventures. ABT.
Yeah, for ABT.
So it's the same thing, same entity.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah. So it just may be another entity that they formed to hold certain trademarks, and that happens a lot because sometimes there's like cross licensing.
Yeah.
So they form a separate entity just for that purpose.
Interesting.
Makes sense. Okay.
This is great. I appreciate it.
Well,
Michael, yeah. So I mean, it looks like this is an ongoing thing, and it looks like it's kind of at the beginning of it. Nothing formally has been filed as of last night. Looks like this is kind of at the beginning of this saga, and so nothing formally was filed that I saw as of last night, and maybe nothing ever will be filed. And it might be one of those things where it's just a behind closed doors negotiation, and it just plays itself out and works out, and there's some kind of settlement of some sort, or it may be looking at the news and see a lawsuit for opposition or cancellation proceeding at some point.
We'll definitely keep our eyes posted on that. So, Michael Cohen, intellectual property, copyright lawyer, trademark lawyer. Thanks for joining us here on the Markcast. We appreciate all your legal insight.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Kyle Smith, the executive director of the USFL project, joining us now. Kyle, good afternoon. How are you?
I could not be better, but did something happen with the USFL last week? I don't know if I heard any news. Why is my Twitter timeline blowing up?
I have to imagine this was a crazy time. But yeah, Paul was out of town, and our good friend of the show, Brian Woods, decided to launch a new football league in the interim. Yeah, what was I guess it was Thursday morning. What was that like for you?
It was pretty wild. I actually called my business partner, Tom Cadle, first and said, "Hey, have you heard this news?" And he said, "No." And I said, "I'm sending you a link right now because we're about to get hammered." And so basically I spent all day Thursday either on phone calls or answering different social media. But yeah, Thursday was wild. Friday was kind of an extension of it. And then it died down a little bit over the weekend. We're still getting questions. A lot of people are curious. A lot of people are excited, and they should be. We're obviously fans of spring football. We wouldn't have put all the time and effort into the USFL project were we not fans. So I think that's a crowded field. And I think I've said that many times, but you're talking about 3 spring football leagues in a time period where it's really been hard to get one off the ground.
Well, to that point, like getting one off the ground, I mean, the USFL was successful until they tried to go up against the NFL. So I really look at that and I go, well, that, there are extenuating circumstances behind some of these spring football leagues, starting off.
Yeah. And, to be honest, besides the AFL, which eventually merged with the NFL, the USFL was off to the best start for any kind of spring league. I mean, look at what happened to the World Football League in the 70s. I mean, it started and stopped before anybody could catch a breath. And the USFL had a great plan. Unfortunately, the owners didn't do what they were kind of told to do by David Dixon to make a successful spring league.
Right.
Before we, dive too much in, can you set the stage kind of for what is the USFL project? I think we, whatever in that mishmash of all the craziness on Thursday, I reached out, and looked you up and everything. But for people listening and watching, what do you guys? Because obviously you were doing this before Thursday, right? So what is the USFL project?
Yes, we started the USFL project on Wednesday.
Yeah.
No, the USFL project's been around for about 15 years, and I started it as a hobby. I remember specifically there was an autograph show out on the East Coast, and as I started looking into it, I noticed a couple of names from the old USFL, and I thought I hadn't thought about that league in a long time, and so I found a company that sold the USFL mini helmets. I bought a Pittsburgh Maulers and a Jacksonville Bulls mini helmet, sent it out to that show, and got Mike Rozier and Archie Griffin, 2 Heisman Trophy winners. So when I got these back and I opened the box, it was like Christmas. I mean, it was just like I went back to 1983 when the USFL officially formed. I mean, they formed a year or two before that, but 83 was my first experience with it. And I thought, you know what? Here's the big goal of the USFL project. I was going to collect an autographed mini helmet from each of the 19 franchises that were a part of the USFL from 83 to 85. And that was it. That's all I was going to do. And then it just turned into this animal where I created a Facebook page and people strangely started following it. And then I would look up news in the morning with my morning coffee, and I would see these news articles about USFL alumni and the great things that they're doing, taking coaching positions, starting nonprofits. I was seeing all this stuff, and I started posting the articles, and we just kept growing and growing and growing to the point where we finally created a Facebook group where other people could get involved, because on the page, it was just me at the time. But we created the group and we started getting even more. We started finding these people who had ticket collections or game programs, game used jerseys and uniforms. And it's just really taken off. I mean, if you had have told me that we would have over 4,000 people in that group right now, I would have laughed and asked what you were smoking. I mean, I would have never in my lifetime guessed that I would have had more than 100 people. And we have so many great members and such a great team behind the USFL project.
So why do you think that is? Why do you think there's so much passion behind it?
I think it's the nostalgia. I mean, the USFL was only one of 2 leagues that really challenged the NFL. I mean, yeah, as I got older, I learned about the struggles behind the USFL and the financials and everything else. But at the time, a lot of people didn't know that. You're talking about a league that came in, no exhibition games, had 12 teams in these 12 major cities with new names, new uniforms, new helmet designs. And it's no secret at that point in the 80s that the NFL was kind of branded the no fun league. I mean, the NFL was a product, but how good of a product was it? That depends on your point of view. And so the USFL comes in and says, hey guys, we want you to have fun. We want you to play. We want you to have fun. And we're going to play in the spring. We've got no competition. The NFL is not a competitor. The college football is not a competitor. The Arena Football League is not a competitor. We really have no competitors. We're going to open up in the spring. We want you guys to go out and have fun, play football. This is what you want to do with your lives. And they brought in so many great players in the onset that the success for the 83 season is very well documented.
Do you think, and obviously, just as someone that's covered the league, is passionate about the league, we deal with this with the XFL a lot, the baggage that comes along, twice failed league, all these kinds of things. Do you think, just in your opinion, Brian Woods, are we better off just doing, we're expanding the spring league, right? We're doing that. Do you think there's enough cachet with the USFL to go through all this, to buy the trademarks, to buy all this stuff, to do everything, or should he just have started fresh? What do you think?
I think time will tell. I mean, without speaking to him directly and knowing what his plan is, I'd be totally out of bounds to try to answer that question. I do think it's going to be an interesting mix with the current decision to keep the spring league and to bring in the USFL. And then again, like we said, XFL 3.0, I guess, coming in 2022. But, for me, I would love nothing better than to see the new USFL succeed. But I'm also an old-time wrestling fan. I would never bet against The Rock. I would never bet against his ex-wife and that company, because I can assure you that they have a very solid plan going into the XFL 3.0. And, this is not an easy thing to walk into. I mean, Vince McMahon put billions of dollars into XFL 2.0. Now, you can blame COVID. You can blame a lot of things for the reasons why it didn't work. I personally enjoyed it. I watched several of the games, but you're talking about needing billions of dollars to create a new startup league. And that's exactly what they're doing. The spring league does have some establishment, but the USFL's new. And the XFL, again, is new with new ownership. So that's a lot of capital. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. That's a lot of talent acquisition. I'm truly glad that these guys are getting a shot to play pro football, but you are going to be getting into guys that wouldn't even make a practice team on the NFL, and you got to deliver a product that people can't stay away from. I mean, you can put these teams in whatever cities you want, but we all know LA's a tough market. LA has struggled in the NFL, so LA's a tough market. I think Florida's a tough market, and and I have some personal feelings about the Jacksonville Jaguars that we can go into a little bit later. But all of these big cities, you've got a lot. New York, I mean, there is so much entertainment in New York, sports and otherwise. Those are tough markets to get into, and even tougher to get people to buy into.
Well, I think to the argument of it being tough for an LA team to succeed in LA, it's got to become a part of the community. And for that example, the Raiders became synonymous with Los Angeles, and this is always going to be a Raiders town. It really is. So that being said, what do you think the steps can be? What steps do you think can be taken to ingratiate these new teams with the community to make them successful?
I think you have to go back to grassroots. I mean, I hate to be the old guy in the room, but I think you have to go back to that grassroots approach that the USFL had. And I don't want to give away the entire business plan, but we've talked to several of the Tampa Bay Bandits alumni, and when they had events, they had Burt's Bash. There goes Bandit right there. Yeah. When they had Burt's Bash, it wasn't the second teamers that showed up to Burt's Bash for the fans. It was everybody. Burt Reynolds was there. John Reeves was there. Gary Anderson was there. They were all signing autographs. They were taking pictures. They were being accessible. And I know we live in a different day and time now where, everybody's got their cell phones and everybody's recording what you say and how you say it and what you do. But I don't see any way that something like this can work without that grassroots approach where the players are accessible no matter whether let's just say for humor that this whole Aaron Rodgers thing in Green Bay goes Dixie, like it looks like it's going to. And Aaron says, okay, I'm going to retire. And then in 2022, he pops up with a team from the USFL. He's got to be just as accessible as the punter, and nothing against punters, but he's got to be just as accessible as anybody on the team, whether it's public relations director, whether it's a cheerleader, what have you. I think the grassroots approach is the only way that people are going to truly embrace this, because there's not a lot of people that remember these teams. There are just as many people out there that know that the New Jersey Generals were a franchise back in the 80s USFL than there are that people think that the Dallas Stallions, which is one of the names that's being thrown around, they think that the Dallas Stallions were probably a part of the old USFL too. They don't know, because we're in such a time gap here that you've got old timers like me that, that love these old team names and everything else coming back. And then you've got young kids that go, man, I'm going to root for the St. Louis Invaders because they were an original USFL franchise. Well, no, they weren't. But St. Louis is a great football town, but the Invaders were in Oakland. They were always going to be in Oakland. As a matter of fact, the Oakland Invaders isn't even the original name when the USFL announced the teams. They were going to be called the Bay City Invaders. And the fans hated it. They said, no, this team's in Oakland. We're proud of Oakland. So the Bay City Invaders lasted about that long.
It's just hard because it's, here we are, we're talking about, trying to get younger demographics, trying to get younger, whatever. And then here we are, pulling this team, pulling teams from the 80, I was born in 86, right? Like I'm, so like this is all, it's just interesting to me to go that route, right? Of, is there that much cachet? Here the Spring League is now, we just have arbitrary teams and arbitrary logos and whatever. And it seems like, with no promotion of any kind from Fox, which we're now finding out is maybe intentional. I've been hearing things that they kind of wanted just to see what this would do on its own without any promotion. It just seems weird to me that like, I'll be curious to see how this translates to, the younger, to the 18, 20, 25-year-olds that didn't live through all this the first time.
Well, and I think that's a really tough thing, because if you read these news stories about pro sports and the younger generation, they're not watching. I hate to say it, I shouldn't be so general. A majority of them are not watching. The younger generation now, instead of watching a 9-inning baseball game, they're going to MLB TV after the game's over and they're watching a 90-second clip. They're watching highlights. They're doing what we as kids used to do with ESPN, but they're not actually watching the game. I would watch the game and then turn around and watch the highlights because I wanted to. Did he really catch that? I wanted to see everything, and that's not what they're doing. They're watching highlights. We live in a very, very microwave society right now where, They don't want their time to be taken up because something might have happened on TikTok. They might have missed something. So I want to watch a 90-second clip of the game, and then I want to go back to Snapchat. I want to go back to TikTok. I want to go back to whatever I was doing. But I am interested to see if this guy threw a no-hitter, if he threw 5 touchdown passes in a game, if he scored a hat trick in the playoffs. They just want to know what happened.
You're gonna trigger Paul with your baseball talk, because Paul firmly believes that baseball is as fruitful as it's been for 100 years.
Well, I don't think it's as fruitful as it's been for 100 years, but I think we're underestimating the, capacity. I know plenty of young people, millennials and younger, that are still watching baseball the entire game on TV. So
okay.
I'm very defensive of my sport. I'm very defensive.
And I hope they are. I really do. But, I listen to, I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which it actually should be Fort Worth, Dallas, because Fort Worth is a better city than Dallas. But that's another.
I hear that a lot.
But I live in this area, and one of the stations I listen to without fail is 105.3 The Fan. And they're the home of the Cowboys, home of the Texas Rangers. And one of the gentlemen on the afternoon show is Mike Bassick. And you may know the name Mike Bassick. He was the pitcher that gave up the famous Barry Bonds home run. So Mike Bassick is on the show, and he talks about it constantly, about how not only his kids, but their friends, they are watching the pared down versions of baseball games just so they see what they need to see. And I think, when you look at a lot of the stories, I think a lot of the younger people, might be in the minority. I hope they are. I hope they're watching because TV needs the ratings. I really do. But I don't think a majority of them are actually watching full games. And that goes for me too. I will say this. I enjoy the NFL product, but I watch NFL Red Zone or whatever they call it. I want to see what is happening. If it's the Dallas Cowboys, I typically watch the game until they start, getting blown out, and then I'll be that kind of fan. I'll turn it off and can't watch it anymore. But I watch the Red Zone channel. I want them to take me to Jacksonville. Here Trevor Lawrence is on the goal line at 4th and goal. And then Jacksonville scores and they go, okay, we've got an update for San Diego. San Diego, Justin Herbert's at, 3rd and 13 and they're backed up near their end zone. I want to see the action all around the league. I don't want to just sit and watch one game.
Why do you think there's such this fascination with the spring football experiment, be it the USFL? We covered fan control football, spring league, XFL, all these, AAF. I mean, why is this? It's like, I used to watch a lot of that Oak Island, right? The hunt for the treasure on Oak Island. Like it's this, we're going for, why this fascination?
Okay. One, I love that show. Yeah. So I appreciate that reference. I think it's because there's really only been 2 competitors to the NFL in the spring. One, you've got this huge gap. You've got the NFL season and the college season that run concurrent, and then come February, we've got no football. And all respect to the other leagues, the smaller arena leagues, the Canadian Football League. I mean, all the respect in the world, but the Canadian Football League's been around longer than any of them. But they just don't have that international following that college football and the NFL has. So I think, one, it fills a gap for all of us diehard football fans. And 2, it's really only worked once. And I say that with a pain in my chest because the AFL is really the only one that succeeded and then the NFL saw the success and they bought them out and said, you're coming with us. And I think had the USFL done the same thing and followed the Dixon plan like they were supposed to and stayed maybe even 2 to 3 to 4 more years, I think you would have seen the same thing happen with the USFL, but the owners saw immediate success and they started spending wildly. And that's something that cannot happen with any of these 3 leagues. I don't care how much money The Rock has. I don't care how much his ex-wife has. I don't care how much that marketing company has. They cannot go out and spend wildly to try to get, I hate using this name and I hate using this reference, but don't go sign Johnny Mansell. Don't do it just because he's got a name and he's going to bring a few eyes to your league. Build on your young stars. And The Rock knows that. He knows that from his WWE days. That's exactly how WWE took down World Championship Wrestling is they built from within. They built their young talent and built them up to superstars, where WCW was trying to lean on the older talent and sign all these big names. They were trying to sign all of these old WWE names and try to keep the company afloat. That's one of the most fascinating documentaries I've ever watched because, one, I lived through it, but it's actually free on Peacock, on the Peacock app. But the Monday Night Wars, one of the best real life documentaries about sport and business that I've ever seen. And then we can get into the true crime docs if you want. I got a list of those, so we might need a whole other show.
Yeah.
How about Colin Kaepernick? XFL. Colin Kaepernick.
If he's good enough to make a team, I'm all for it. But he's been sitting dormant for 5 years now. Is it longer?
It's longer. Paul loves Cap. Paul loves Kaepernick.
I wouldn't say I love him. I think that, I think that there's still something there. I still think there's something in the tank.
if he's got the mental capacity to want to play and want to win, if he's in shape and he's got the talent to beat out somebody else on a roster, put him in.
Yeah.
Put him in, because we get so sideways about that whole Colin Kaepernick thing. And I'm going to say this, and this is my personal belief. This doesn't have anything to do with what I'm doing, where we're going, anything about that. But Colin Kaepernick got put in a horrible situation. And what he was doing, what he was protesting, is not what he got accused of. He was protesting police brutality. He wasn't protesting the US of A. Put down your Budweiser and, take your jean shorts off and just realize what he was actually protesting. He was protesting the way people were being treated by police in a certain area. And I really do. I think he got sideways.
Completely agree.
Yeah. Lessons that Brian Woods, Fox, and the new USFL can learn, to do or not do from history, right? To not see history repeat itself here moving forward.
Don't overspend. Have a solid plan in place, and don't expand too quick. Those are three of the main things that killed the USFL. There's a certain owner out there that was a part of our original USFL that takes a beating about being the reason that the USFL went away. And it wasn't him. It was a lot of the owners, because that Dixon plan was solid. And if you ever read into it, which is fascinating, by the way, they had a cap. And the cap was for the teams to stay under this amount of money. I believe it's a little over $3 million. And then they had these great TV contracts in these great cities. So several of the owners get a little bit of success. And then you've got an owner, Tannenbaum, with the Michigan Panthers. He goes out and buys the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line. Well, that's great, but you can't do that. That if you don't follow the Dixon plan, you can't do that. Now, it led Michigan to a title, but the ramifications of it, you had Michigan as the 1983 USFL champion, and then they have to merge with Oakland in 1985 and move out to Oakland. That's how bad financially it was. And Tannenbaum, he built shopping malls for a living. He was a fantastic entrepreneur, businessman, but he just thought he could spend wildly. He's like, it's my money. It's my money. I'll spend it however I want. You're going to tell me that I have to have a $3 million cap? I got more money than that. And that's what these owners of these teams have to understand. Don't overspend. And the reason you don't overspend in the early part of a new league is because you have to be ready for those lean years. No matter how much TV success you're having, no matter how much merchandise you're selling, it does not matter. You've got to be prepared for those lean years. And then, again, don't expand. And that's one of the big concerns I have right now. And I think you've even addressed it. They've already gone out and bought more trademarks. So they've talked about these 8 teams that are going to start the new USFL.
Minimum of 8. I thought it was interesting on the Spring League broadcast this week. It said minimum of 8 teams.
Yeah, I did think that was interesting too. And I think if they go with any more than 8 teams to start out with, I think there's going to be trouble on the onset. I hope that they stick to 8 teams. I do, for the Birmingham people out there, I do think it's a travesty. Even though I'm going to enjoy having a team in Dallas called the Stallions, potentially, I think it's a travesty that Birmingham did not get the Stallions back. They were well supported in Birmingham. There are a lot of people in our Facebook group that want the Birmingham Stallions back. And I think not going to Birmingham is a mistake. That being said, I'm going to jump back into this real quick, and then I promise I'll get back to your question. But, we talked about Jacksonville just a little bit earlier. I will stick my flag in the ground like I will with many things that involve the USFL. I don't think the Jacksonville Jaguars are here without the Jacksonville Bulls. The Jacksonville Bulls were one of the league leaders for 3 years in the USFL in attendance. And the NFL saw that Jacksonville was completely supporting and embracing that team. So it's no coincidence that Jacksonville played their last game in 1985, and 10 years later, the Jacksonville Jaguars are being announced as an expansion team. So if you're going to tell me that the NFL wasn't watching every single thing that the USFL was doing and cherry picking, I'd point you to that.
I mean, they watched what the XFL was doing with the Skycam and incorporated that too. So, it's a thing that happens.
Yeah, they took every good idea the USFL has, and good for them. I mean, there's things that work, there's things that don't, and I'm glad at least the NFL has brought in some of those things. But it was just a tough thing to see the USFL go away, because there were so many people that really, really enjoyed it. But when you going back to the original question, when you go from 12 teams and have some pretty good success and you expand to 18 teams, that's pretty rough. I mean, I'm very thankful that they put a team in Oklahoma, because that's where I lived at the time. And I loved having the Oklahoma Outlaws, but they put them in Tulsa. I mean, football country in Oklahoma is Norman with the Sooners and Stillwater with the Cowboys. And you stick that team up in Tulsa, not a good plan. They put one in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's a great football city, but people didn't buy into it because they had the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers were really good at that point. So don't overexpand. And, again, the grassroots approach, I think they have to make everybody accessible. They have to have these fan events. They have to make them fun. You don't have to spend a lot of money to have fun. I mean, I don't know if you guys are married or single or whatever, but you can take a blanket and a 6-pack and lay it in the back of a truck and go park at the beach or go park in the woods and look at the stars and have a really good time. And that's pretty cheap. Yeah. You can make these fan events cheap and fun, and nobody would know the difference. You just have to be accessible.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just 2 quick comments here before we let you go. We're talking about one of the former owners, with Trump and all that. We've been talking in our chats about that, and at least his checks cleared, right, compared to what I've heard some of the other owners. And then, with the expansions, absolutely. I mean, we still get every week, the XFL needs to expand to these cities. And it's like, let's get through a season, then we can talk about. So yes, absolutely. I really appreciate that. I'll toss back to Paul, but I just wanted to get in those 2 comments.
I'm totally good with my questions. It's been very insightful to have you on, Kyle, and talking about, what you're doing with USFL Legacy Project to kind of keep it in the minds and the hearts of everybody, the old USFL. And it's great advice going forward for the new one, the new USFL.
Well, we didn't really get into it. Maybe we can get into it next time if I'm allowed to come back on after my hot take on baseball.
Oh, you're good.
But we, just like the new USFL, we've got some pretty lofty goals, and we're not at a point where we can share that yet. But we're working behind the scenes. There's a whole team. Myself, Tom Cadle, Jim Parcells, Rob Butts. There's a whole team working behind the scenes, and we've got some pretty lofty goals for the USFL project.
Well, you have to come on and share. Yeah.
Yeah. When you get ready to launch those things, please come on, talk with us about it.
Man, we'd love to. If I can really quickly, make sure and go to the USFL project group. You can go to Facebook to the groups and search the USFL project. We got a lot of chatter in there. We've got a lot of good things. We'd love to have you aboard. We are also on Twitter at the USFL Project and on Instagram at the USFL Project.
Perfect.
And you guys are one of my favorite YouTube shows.
Okay. Oh, thanks.
You guys are right up there with Hot Ones. If you have not seen Hot Ones, that's one of the best shows on YouTube. But you guys are right up there.
I'll take that.
Well, we appreciate the love. We appreciate it a lot. Kyle Smith, the USFL Project, thank you for jumping on with us and chatting.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Welcome back. Want to thank all of our guests, all 5 of them. Wow.
And imagine if the Spring League would have got back to me about our big guest, which they haven't yet. They said, Sammy says you're still working on it. We could, yes, but the Spring League, I still have my net out. I'm waiting for our big Spring League fish, but yes, 5 guests.
Okay. So when this dropped last week, it was unfortunate that I was out of town and unavailable to come on. And I'm regretful for that because I have so many questions. And Brian, I think I have no negative feeling about Brian whatsoever. My concern is if you didn't have the capital to feed your players adequately during the Spring League 18 months ago, do I really feel confident you have the capital now to basically start the USFL again? I don't feel confident. I don't know how you approached investors with the track record that you had with the TSL. I mean, I have to be critical. I like Brian. I think Brian's been a great guest and I have no ill feeling toward him. Like my feelings between how I feel about him personally and how I feel about him professionally are different. And I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, I have legitimate concerns about this being a profitable and worthwhile venture. Like, I think our guests kind of tiptoed around that because they don't know how this is going to all play out. But I am calling it for what it is. Like, you had trouble feeding the players, getting a solid COVID plan in place. We talked to Kent Shelby. He went into detail about some of the stuff that was going on at the Spring League, not even 18 months ago. And now you're putting another football product on the field next year with this stuff still kind of in our collective knowledge. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah. The biggest thing for me, and it came out with the Steve Ehrhart interview, and not that, like he's gonna, I don't think, gonna like fight them legally or whatever. I just don't get why buy the USFL stuff and not involve past management. Because I was talking with Dorothy about this last night. Because she's like, well, who, like, because we were, recording that. She's like, who were you talking to? I said, well, we were talking to, Steve. She's like, so they didn't reach out to anybody? And I'm like, no. And that's what you don't have to reach out to anybody. Like, go do your own thing. Like, that's great. But then why are you buying these trademarks? Yeah, that's what I don't get.
I don't get it either. And I don't know, like, I kind of feel like this is like a situation much like the AAF situation where I think what's happening is they're trying to put a product together without getting the capital together. And they're hoping getting the product together is going to then turn around and get them capital. And we saw what happened with the AAF. It failed miserably because they didn't have the capital. They're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I'm hoping that's not the case here. And I just have concerns that they're buying trademarks. And these trademarks are going to go to waste in a year if they don't have the adequate funding. I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, it was a pretty sparse press release, where we don't know a lot about the investors. We don't know, obviously Fox is involved and all of that. So, I mean, I think it's good. It's good for us, obviously, to talk about for the podcast. It's great for whatever. But yeah, I just don't, I don't get doing the past stuff and then not incorporating. Again, that's my biggest takeaway. The other funny thing, and the second this came out, people were like, oh, they're going to merge with the XFL merge. They're not going to merge. Okay. Like, can we knock this off with all this? Here's the deal. And I shared this like 16 times and I'm amazed. When Brian Woods came on our show pre-Spring League, he laid out this whole plan about all this. About they're going to do the bubbles and then they're going to expand and then they're going to move to this. Like all this kind of stuff. He talked about the past with the USFL. He talked all about the history. I'm like, I just am astounded that hasn't gotten like more traction. But on the podcast, Brian's like, This is what we're doing, and we're not taking the back seat to anybody. That is his quote. Does that sound like someone that's going to merge with the XFL in a year, Paul?
Not at all. Not at all.
It's not. It's not. Brian, and that's great. I mean, I'm not saying he should or not, but I'm saying, like, I think Brian doesn't want to do, I don't think Brian loves the XFL. I mean, obviously they work together, whatever, but I think Brian's like, F it. I can do it. I don't need them. I don't need this name. I mean, but I need the USFL name.
I need to revive a dead league.
Yeah, just a couple interesting some trademarks. I think there's more. They're still buying trademarks right now, but a lot of these names, and even friend of the show Jim Mullen pointed this out, that a lot of these trademarks are current XFL cities. St. Louis Invaders, Dallas Stallions, Houston Gamblers, Tampa Bay Bandits, and then there's like Pittsburgh and New Orleans and stuff. I love I get see all these comments on Facebook like, the TSL is coming into the XFL's turf. This isn't. I'm like, this is nobody's turf. Like, XFL barely drew in Tampa Bay. Give me a break. Like, I am an XFL podcaster. Don't be a mark. Like, they couldn't get 9,000 people in Tampa Bay.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Not really their turf.
Like,
St. Louis, you could make an argument for.
I'll make an argument. Houston, but like, XFL is gone right now, right? I mean, they're working on stuff, and when they come back with this whole like, well, when the XFL comes back, boys, I'm like, this isn't like their street corner that they left, and like, well, this is
the Wire. This isn't the Wire. This isn't the Baltimore Projects. Like, this isn't the Towers. Prop Joe's not going to come out, and Omar's not coming, and like, come on, man, what?
No, that's crazy.
Street corners.
Just a couple things. They asked CFL Commissioner Rambrosi about an idea of a partnership with the Spring League. He said they did speak. He told Brian Woods, the CEO, that the Canadian League was too busy dealing with the various elements of COVID-19 to seriously consider a partnership. He was welcome to send the commissioner a follow-up email. He never requested a formal proposal from Woods or expressed interest in the partnership plan. Yeah, CFL's like, we don't have time for this. Like, we don't because the CFL knows that maybe they know that like this, the money is questionable. Where Redbird Capital has billions of dollars, the money with the Spring League and now the USFL is definitely sus, as the kids would say. It's like when we, it's like I feel like the Spring League kind of reaching out to the CFL. That's like when we try to book guests like higher than our ceiling. Like, there's certain guests we can get, and then it's like, okay, like that was like them like shooting for that. Like, can we get someone on the show? And like, we're much more in the, but every once in a while we get like a Jim Mullen or something. We can outkick our coverage every once in a while. But I do think that was outkicking. Just a couple quick game notes. I really only watched the Lyman Aviators game, but this was astounding. Stan, friend of the show, Stan Bedwell, held the game-winning kick that Jonathan Song kicked. And it was just like phenomenal. You had the backup quarterback coach that had been on our show, that Stan held the ball, and it was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal game. The Aviators have still not won a game.
Tough break. 380,000 viewers for the Generals' 39-27 victory over the Sea Lions. Off just 5% for the season. The average, I take it, right?
Sorry. Yeah.
Cool.
And then they just announced, I just see here the logo. I forgot to mention this. The TSL championship game is called the Mega Bowl. What say you?
Okay.
the Mega
Bowl.
Here's a couple interesting XFL Spring League stuff. I wanted to tease this earlier. I forgot. So Doug Flutie, right, did the big USFL announcement, played and all that. Doug Flutie is a former XFL advisor back when they did the relaunch back in 2019, 2020.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's on the website listed as like advisor.
That's very cool. Doug Flutie is a popular kid at the dance. Who knew? Also, this is astounding to me. So back in the doldrums of when we didn't have anything to talk about, Brian Michael Cooper was the former Houston Roughnecks president. We've corresponded a lot online. He was going to come on the show. It just never worked out. And there like wasn't really anything to talk about, just like how's life, whatever. So Brian Michael Cooper was a lawyer. Then he was the Roughnecks thing. And then now he's back being a lawyer again. He is part of the organization now that is doing the legal stuff for the USFL. It's interesting. That's very interesting. Nice weird spin there.
So, maybe if Steve takes this up on their offer and hires Michael Cohen, right, to fight the Spring League, maybe we put all this together.
Maybe we just become the court of law. Maybe they just argue on the Markcast, and we could be the judge and jury on this. We can decide who gets the trademarks.
Yes,
I like that idea. That would be a great idea. Why not?
That's our next duel. It's the USFL versus Steve Ehrhart. But that's astounding to me that Brian Michael Cooper, that the US, like the XFL president,
incestuous. It's very incestuous.
Yeah.
This guy's just hopping beds, for lack of a better term. Interesting.
Yeah. I got an FCF note, and then we're going to open this wonderful package, and we'll get out of here. Oh, I stepped on the keyboard. Sorry. Oh, sorry. I stepped on the keyboard. Sorry. What did you think about? We have our first official fan controlled football NFL signing.
Congrats to Travis Toivonen.
It's a tough one.
Toivonen. I don't have my glasses on, so it's hard to read. Like, is that an I or an L? Congrats to him. Wide receiver signing with the Seahawks, giving Russell Wilson more options because they didn't get Julio Jones. So,
yeah, is it Julio or Julio? I've heard Julio.
I say Julio. I mean, I think it's tomato.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm very happy that Travis, Trav Daddy, I think that's like his username, whatever. But yeah, give Russ some weapons. Let Russ cook. And that's great. Again, we want the players to succeed. I think it's fair to say fan control doesn't appreciate us, and that's fine. But I will look out for the players, and I think that's phenomenal that he got on there. So
definitely. Cool. Let's open that package.
Yeah. So Matt Mengel, friend of the show. He's going to be kicking for the Alouettes. Matt is an avid esports gamer. He's got Team Nuklear, Nuklear. That's like his gamer thing. And so all the Nuclear guys are following that. But I got this. I think you're going to dig this, Paul. I think we're going to really dig this. This is, can't get this open. But this is better than the Brian Woods Jousters t-shirts. This is going to be.
Anything's better than that.
Yeah. Also, please subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,500 by the end of the thing. Oh, Matt asked if I wanted it signed. I said no because I want to wear it. So, yeah, Sector 6 Apparel. That's who put this together. Yeah, this thing is going to be sick. Yeah, here we go. This is going to be good.
That's badass.
And check out the back. Look at this. Look at this. Oh, yeah.
I dig it. Awesome.
That's cool, man. I'm going to hang it. I mean, I'll wear it, but I wanted the only way I wanted it is if I could get a custom Markcast. That is pretty cool.
Awesome work, Matt. Awesome work.
But, I felt like, Matt came on the show, supported the show. I'm down to support, but it says bombs away, Team Nuclear. And best wishes to Matt and Cole Boozer. I said, because I'm an Elks, right? We're the Elks. And I said, when you find out that Cole Boozer and Matt Mengel are on the Alouettes, and it was like the fat kid with the ice cream at because that's the unofficial team of the Markcast.
Is the Alouettes?
I think so.
Okay. Well, we got three teams now, like between your team, my team, and the team of the Markcast. It's like three. We're 33% of the league. We're winning 33% of the time. So yes, that's very cool. I want to thank everybody for listening. Again, go to manscaped.com. Use the code Markcast to get you 20% off free shipping. And of course, let's see, Reed's wearing the shirt. He's awkwardly trying to point at the logo there.
There we go.
Again, go to YouTube, subscribe to us. Also, please subscribe to us on your podcast services, whether it be Apple, whether it be Google, whether it be Deezer, whether it be Pandora, whatever the case may be. Please just subscribe and, keep listening. We appreciate everyone who listens every week and those who interact with us and give us constructive criticism on Twitter, of course. And we'll see you next week.